Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku became a blind villain? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Infamous Vigilante, Shadow strikes again. Today at relatively 6 p.m., the well-known Vigilante, Shadow, took down one of the largest drag cartels in Japan, Mizutofu. The Vigilante, who has been escaping police and hero custody for 2 years now, evaded once again capturing. However, we need to ask ourselves, with everything that he's done for Japan, can we really consider Shadow a villain? Tell us your opinion. Aizawa turned his television off with a huff. It's been 2 years since the first appearance of Shadow. A mysterious vigilante that always manages to escape both the police and the hero's grasp. It's been almost 2 years since Aizawa, better known as the underground hero, Eraserhead, joined the pursuit of the vigilante. Shadow is one of the very few people that ever managed to escape him. Shadow always gets the job done, never lingers long enough to get captured, and most importantly never leaves any trace behind, except for the usual note that was either really useful in their cases or just another joke. Aizawa was getting more and more frustrated by the day. This vigilante isn't like the others. He's gained a lot of support from the public. He made a name for himself by patrolling the slums and the neglected part of the city, places where heroes don't usually go. Also, by taking down the villains that the heroes don't realize exists until they're caught. As time went by, people started calling out for him. They started calling for the Shadow, the hooded figure that somehow always manages to hear their call for help. He was a hero to most people, but a DMN frustrating one in Shuda's opinion. He was cut off from his line of thought when his phone vibrated in his pocket. There, in bold letters on his screen, was the name of the detective in charge of the vigilante's case. Speak of the devil, I guess. He thought bitterly as he answered the call. Tsukachi, is there a reason you are calling me at this hour? His usual monotone voice didn't betray the slight curiosity he felt. Eraserhead, Shadow was just spotted stopping a store robbery on 24th Street. If we go now, we can ambush him. I'll be there, he replied, his tone serious and calm. This was their chance. Maybe they can finally find out who he was. He'd make sure that this time would be different. This time, he was going to catch the slippery BSRD. Aizawa picked up his capture gear, and with that, he was on his way. He had a vigilante to catch after all. Izuku believes that today was a good day. An exhausting day, but a good day nonetheless. Today he had finally put an end to one of the drag cartels that used to rule the streets of Mizutofu. It's been 3 months since he initially started their pursuit, and he finally managed to put an end to their crimes. However, his day didn't end there, because not half an hour ago, he was caught up in an armed robbery down the 24th Street. Some idiots thought it would be easy to just steal from the old lady working there. Man, were they wrong. Izuku can still hear their high-pitched screams as they tried to run away from the granny with the knife quirk. Yet, he couldn't help the bad feeling he was getting. Years of experience made his instincts as sharp as ever. He learned to trust them, and they have never failed him, once. He just hoped that whatever was about to happen, he would get through it unscathed. As he ran, jumping from roof to roof, he tried to listen in for any kind of distressing noise. Over the years, he had honed his senses and trained his powers. He was able to hear everything around him. From the news playing in the living room of some civilians a couple of blocks from here, to the heartbeats of the people currently walking in the streets below him. Izuku likes his night patrols. He likes the quiet. He made sure to always be on high alert though. If someone needed help, he'd be there. It's been 2 years since he started hitting the streets as Shadow, a hooded vigilante. His training and hard work had paid off, enabling him to finally make a difference and help people. Even though it was illegal. He didn't really have any other choice though, did he? He jumped down an empty alley, deciding that he was done for the day. However, whatever plans he had were shot out the window as soon as he felt a slight change of wind behind him. He could hear the all-too-familiar heartbeat of the underground hero himself. Eraserhead. Ducking to the ground and rolling, he easily avoided the capture weapon that was being thrown his way. He could hear a huff coming from the man that was now standing in front of him. "It's over, Shadow, give yourself up. The police are surrounding the place," the hero said, his voice neutral, tone calm. However, Izuku could hear the slight alteration in his heartbeat, betraying his calm demeanor. Yet, it indicated no sign of lying. Izuku stayed silent. This was the first time the hero managed to get this close to him. Now, you may be wondering how a 14-year-old teenager ended up being an infamous vigilante. They say that it takes losing everything you love to realize what they truly mean to you. This is the story of how Izuku Midoriya lost everything he ever loved. The blazing sun beats down on the concrete floor of the neighborhood sidewalk. Izuku Midoriya limps home, his posture stiff, shoulder hunched and head down as his mind goes through the events of the past few hours. Today was a particularly bad day for the green-haired boy. Bakugo, or as he liked to call him, Kaken, was a little more aggressive than usual. The 10-year-old in question was playing in the school playground with his other classmates while Izuku gingerly wrote in his notebook with colored crayons. The greenette hummed under his breath the familiar tune of All Might's theme song as he analyzed one of the latest up-and-coming pro heroes that had just recently debuted. However, his concentration was interrupted as shouting was heard coming from the swings. Izuku, having grown accustomed to the blonde boy's behavior, immediately got up to deal with whatever the explosive boy was up to. Despite their young age, kids could be cruel. Bakugo was towering over a small kid, explosions going off in his palms as he laughed maniacally. Kaken's quirk was a powerful one. He had the ability to create explosions by detonating his own sweat. The explosions, albeit small at the moment, would cause great damage in the future if trained properly. It was the perfect quirk for heroes, and the blonde sure as hell knew that. In this day and in our society, quirks defined a person and thus determined their fate. People with powerful quirks were bound to take positions of power. Their place forever amongst the most respected and feared individuals, they would take up jobs in the government or become heroes, living and relishing in the spotlight. However, people with weak quirks were destined to be at the service of those with powers. In this society, Izuku found himself at the bottom of the food chain, destined to be shunned and looked down upon by society's worst individuals. He did not have a strong quirk. In fact, he did not have one at all. Izuku looked at the scene before him. The kid was trembling under Bakugo's glare, his eyes were cast down, tears rolled freely down his bruised cheeks as he apologized for whatever he had done to piss the 10-year-old off. The blonde wasn't having any of it though. Bakugo's palms started to crackle, small explosions slowly making their way towards the vulnerable boy. The latter seemed to be frozen from fear as he prepared himself for the impending pain. Before he thought better of it, Izuku was already running towards them. His small body instantly blocking the path of the explosive boy, his arms were held up in front of him in a makeshift defensive stance as he acted as a living shield for the kid behind him. Now, staggering home from that exceptionally bad beating, he thought that maybe it wasn't the best idea to provoke the boy with the explosion quirk. He had no regrets though, at least the other kid got to run away mostly unscathed. He wanted to be a hero after all, and heroes saved people even if it meant getting hurt themselves. Izuku stepped inside their small apartment. He pulled on the hem of his shirt, making sure that all of his bruises were carefully hidden from his mother's gaze. He plastered on his most convincing smile and stepped into the kitchen, calling a brief greeting to alert her of his presence. He didn't want his mother to worry about him. She had enough on her plate. Her job was exhausting, her shifts long and tiring. However, she couldn't raise her son on her own otherwise. Being a single mother was hard. Being the single mother of a quirkless kid was even harder. Apparently, his smile wasn't as convincing as he would have liked it to be because as soon as she turned towards him, she froze. Her smile immediately faltered as her brows shut up in surprise. Many emotions swirled in her olive green eyes. Shock, confusion, worry, and finally painful understanding. The emotions were quickly overlapped by the blatant worry she was feeling. Izuku felt a pang of guilt for being the reason behind his mother's frown. He tried to say something, anything to placate her worries, but before he could manage a single word, he was engulfed in a bear hug. His mother, despite her small and slim figure, was a steady and strong presence in his life. She always knew when there was something wrong with him, and she always found a way to make him feel better. "Hey sweetie, what's wrong?" she asked tentatively. Her voice was soft and gentle. She would not push if he didn't feel like talking at the moment. It's just, today was a long day, Mom. Can we talk later?" His words were barely above a whisper, but she heard them nonetheless. "Well, we will have to talk about it later, baby, okay?" A small nod was her only response. "How about we go out for ice cream? There's this new all-night shop that opened. It's a bit far, but I could drive us there. Put on your favorite music while we drive." The boy brightened up at that. His mother really did know how to cheer him up. He nodded feverishly before hugging her and rushing upstairs to put his bag down. The sun was setting by the time they reached the highway. The ride was silent. Peaceful. Izuku listened to the soft tune coming from the radio as Inko hummed to the song that was playing in a low, soothing voice. He gazed onto the slideshow of pine trees and distant lights they were passing. The city illuminations and ambience were beautiful. He was so lost in thought that he barely registered the loud honk that startled him out of his reverie, followed by the blinding light that came from his mom's window, rapidly approaching towards them. It all happened so fast, yet it felt like everything was happening in slow motion, like someone had stopped the flow of time. The moment forever suspended and frozen. The next events would be forever engraved in Izuku's mind. The impact was abrupt and violent. The world swirled around them, turned upside down as the car swerved and tumbled on the road. Glass flew everywhere, multiple shards grazing his cheek and arms as he tried to cover his face. His attempts proved feeble as his whole body was being jostled and his stomach strained against his seatbelt. Izuku registers things in vague awareness. He feels his stomach twist as pain erupts in his side. His head throbs and he feels dampness spread on his shirt and down his forehead. He tried to open his eyes, but some kind of liquid was hindering his attempts. That proved to be the wrong thing to do though, because as soon as he opened them he regretted it. Pain flared in his pupils. His eyes stung horribly, the sensation excruciating. His eyes burned, it felt as if they were on fire. He tried to scream but no sound would come out. His breath caught in his throat as tears rolled down his face. His vision was dimming, black spots dancing in his eyes as he tried to make the aching stop. Slowly all light had left his eyes. The world quickly bathed in deep, endless darkness. He couldn't see. Why couldn't he see? Why were his eyes burning? Where was his mom? Whatever reasoning the boy tried to convey was overlapped by the overwhelming sense of pain. He tried calling out for his mother, but his cries were answered by painful silence. The pain in his eyes was increasing, the aching turning into pure agony as he tried to rub at his pupils, as he tried to find any way to make it stop. His breathing was getting more and more constricted by the second as he dissolved into a state of utter fear and panic. The pain was unbearable, more than a mere child could handle. Then it all stopped. Consciousness escaped the boy as he finally succumbed to his miserable state. Inko jolted into awareness with a start. Omnipresent scent of chemicals accosted her senses. Her first thoughts were hazy and confused. What had happened? Where was she? Realization dawned on her as she finally took in her surroundings. She had been driving when a truck swerved and crashed to the side of her car. Her eyes widened as she gasped in worry. She tried to turn around to check on Izuku, but his seatbelt was digging into her side. She tried taking it off, but her attempts were useless. The pain too much to handle every time she moved. However, this was her son and she needed to make sure he was okay. She tried calling out to him but got no response. Concern and fear gnawed at her insides as she thought of the possible states her son could be in. He was fine, right? He was alive, right? Oh no, what if no? Her movements were getting frantic. She needed to save her son. She needed to help him. She heard footsteps coming towards them and felt the car jostle slightly as a figure suddenly emerged from the window next to her. She felt relief flood her system. Someone was here. Someone could save Izuku. The man had long black hair and deep bags under his eyes. She couldn't see any emotions in the man's features, but somehow his calm and collected attitude reassured her that they would be okay. Yet she couldn't stop worrying. Her baby wasn't responding, and what if he was badly hurt? He needed help. The man spoke. He was asking her to stay still so he could get her out and then get to her son. Did he want to get her out before Izuku? Anything else the man said didn't seem important. Her son comes first. No, Izuku. You need to help him first. You need to make sure he's okay. He comes first. Please. The man seemed to think about it for a second before he merely nodded and got to work. She watched as the man carried a bloodied and battered Izuku out of the car, gently laying him on the ground a couple of meters away from the car. She could feel the heat coming from the back seat. Now, Inko seemed to realize what the man meant when he said that the car was at risk of catching fire. The chemicals that were spilled from the truck had seeped into the car. She couldn't bring herself to care though. Her baby was safe. He was going to be okay, and that's all that mattered after all, right? She smiled to herself, thinking of her sweet and loving son. She hoped he'd be okay without her. He was strong. He would be okay. That was her last thought as she felt the heat increase, and in an instant, the car exploded. The chemicals, highly flammable, had reached the fire that erupted in the engines. Izuku was just 10 when he lost everything. Izuku wakes up with a jolt. His breath gets caught in his throat as he gets assaulted instantly by the strong smell of antiseptics and disinfectants. It's dark, he can't see. Why can't he see? There's something on his face. His arms lift up to cup his head and he can feel bandages wrapped around his eyes. Everything around him feels amplified. The sheets between his fingers scrape against his skin uncomfortably, and he's painfully aware of every little thing that's happening around him. There's a loud dripping sound near him. He flinches as every drop is just too loud. Everything feels too loud. He holds his hands up to cover his ears. He just can't take it anymore. His head throbs with the onslaught of information he's retaining all at once. Complete darkness, beyond black, surrounds him. He can feel the vibration of everything around him. The way the heart monitors beeps and buzzes, the sound rhythmic and grounding. He feels the electric current going through the walls and the lights, even though he doesn't see them. He slowly glances around and he's startled to actually see something. It's still dark, it's still agonizingly empty, but he sees it. He sees the sound waves that echo all around him. The dripping sound is coming from the 4 drip next to him. It seems that he's in a hospital room. Every drip gives him a clearer image of the room. Why was he in a hospital? His heart rate picks up, the monitor quickly becoming overbearingly loud. He remembers the car ride. He remembers his mother's voice, soothing and soft as she hummed to his favorite song. He remembers white and the world spinning all around them. Where was she? Was she okay? He tries to get up, but a searing pain from his side sends him tumbling to the floor with a thud. He wheezes and clutches his abdomen as he tries to ride out the pain. He can't see. Why can't he see? He feels dampness on his face as tears start rolling from his eyes. He just wanted his mom. Where was she? Why wasn't she here? He can feel vibrations coming from outside the room, people approaching, coming and going. He hears a loud beating sound. He's too focused on the rhythmic beating that he doesn't notice when a figure enters his room. A hand on his shoulder startles him. The scare sends him scurrying away from the contact. He realizes with a jolt that the beating sound is the person's heartbeat. The sound echoes through the room and he can vaguely see the person's silhouette. The shape is feminine. He can see the slight curve of her figure. The woman's voice confirms his doubts. Midori-kun, you're awake. I'm Nurse Yuri, you need to lay down. You are still recovering and moving around will only make it worse. Her voice is firm and her touch is gentle as she slowly guides him towards the bed. Where's my mom? I want my mom. He asks quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. The doctor's heart clenches at the sight before her. The boy is wrapping his arms around himself as if trying to hide, to make himself as small as possible. Midori-kun, your mom didn't make it. I'm sorry, the hero that rescued you did everything he could. Do you remember what happened before? She asks carefully, not wanting to overwhelm the boy. No, mom can't be gone. She can't. We were going for ice cream. My mom wanted to cheer me up, so she took me for a ride in the car. We went out because of me. We were driving when something came crashing into us and everything was white and I couldn't see anymore, and it burned and mom wasn't answering me and I kept shouting for her but she wouldn't respond and I can't see. Why can't I see? Izuku was hyperventilating by now, his breathing coming out as short gasps. His words getting louder and faster as he remembered the horrible events he went through. It's all my fault. Mum's gone and it's my fault. He wailed, his head rocketing back and forth as he dissolved into a hysterical mess. Everything was just too loud, he couldn't believe his mother was gone. She was everything he had. The doctor crouched in front of him and held him by the shoulders. Her grip was solid but light. The contact anchoring Izuku back to reality as she helped him breathe. Midoriya-kun, you need to breathe with. 1-2, come on, deep breathe. You're fine. You're safe. It's not your fault. Your mom loved you. It wasn't your fault. She spoke softly as she held him in her arms, gently rubbing circles down his back. Izuku doesn't know how much time they passed as the nurse slowly worked him out of his panic attack. He'd gotten lost in her beating heartbeat as he tried to steady his breathing and follow the rhythm of the loud thumb against her chest. When he was calm enough, she gently pushed the exhausted boy back onto the bed, making sure to make him as comfortable as possible. Sleep overtook him as bone-deep exhaustion set in his entire being. Her heart ached at the thought of what this child still had to face. He appeared so small, in that big hospital bed. So vulnerable. Life could be cruel. The next time Izuku woke up, the sounds around him felt more subsided. He felt as if he had more control over his senses. Although, everything was still too loud. He took in a deep breath and tried to focus. Slowly but surely the things around him were starting to take form. He focused on the things happening in his room only and it was working. His head didn't hurt as hard as before and his mind didn't feel overwhelmed. Izuku was just so tired. His mother was the only person that truly loved him and cared about him. The only person that truly mattered to him, and she was gone. It just felt so unreal, like this was just some horrible nightmare that he'd wake up from. He hoped he could just wake up and go looking for his mother. He'd hug her, he'd never let her go. Alas, this was not a nightmare, not like the ones you wake up from at least. This kind of nightmare was the one that stayed with you, the one that never ended. The ones you'd never wake up from. A couple of minutes passed as he sat there. In complete silence and darkness. Alone. Was this what life was going to be for him from now on? Was he permanently blind? Why weren't the doctors saying anything to him? Did they think he'd break? As soon as he finished his train of thought, a knock on the door pulled him out of his reverie. The door opened and a tall man walked in. Izuku could tell from the shape of the figure, the way the sound waves resounded from his every movement. The beating of his heart was steady, the rhythm maintaining some kind of coolness in his composure. Hello, young Midoriya, my name is Dr. Hiro. You came in here with some pretty serious injuries. I must say, it's a miracle we managed to get to you in time. However, I may have some bad news. His only response was a soft grunt. Dull green eyes continued to stare at the ceiling, unseeing. The doctor took it as his cue to continue. First of all, as you may have already noticed, the accident had damaged your retinas beyond repair. I'm afraid you are permanently blind. His blunt statement didn't get any reaction either, since Izuku had already known that much. The truck that hit your mother's vehicle was carrying toxic chemical substances. At the moment of impact, the driver had unconsciously used his quirk atom reconstruction and changed the chemical structure of the liquid. We don't know what he did specifically, but it seems the toxins were rendered to a higher level of toxicity. Some of the liquid had seeped into your vehicle, effectively getting into both your eyes and your system. Izuku shifted slightly at the new information. Was this the reason behind his newfound senses? Did the combination of both the driver's quirk and the chemicals alter his DNA? My system? He asked quietly. Izuku had an idea of what it meant, but he had to be sure. Yes, I'm afraid that you were exposed to the chemicals long enough for it to get into your system. The chemicals, being of a new and unheard of construction, made it impossible for us to properly extract it from your body to test out or alter. When Izuku made a confused sound, the doctor seemed to realize that he was indeed speaking to a 10-year-old. What I mean to say, Midoriya-kun, is that the toxins have found their way into your bloodstream and into your organs. The chemicals in your system are slowly destroying your cells. Now, with the help of our medical staffs and a couple of healing quirks, We've managed to slow down the process as much as we could. We estimate about 8 years before your organs begin to shut down permanently mid-area. Hiro knew he was being harsh, telling a 10-year-old kid that he had roughly 8 years left to live. However, it was necessary. The kid didn't have any other living relative and seemed aware enough to comprehend the seriousness of the situation. At least this way, he'd know not to waste the precious time he still had. Izuku could only sit there as his life crumbled around him. He could only sit there, frozen as it shattered into a million tiny pieces that could never be mended. His mother was gone, his sight was gone. His future too, it seems. He let the tears roll freely down his cheeks as he wished for his mother to come back. To hug him and tell him that everything was going to be okay. That he'd wake up from this and that it'll all be just a nightmare. Alas, it wasn't. It wasn't a nightmare because this wasn't something he could wake up from. This was something worse. This, he could never escape. Everything I loved became everything I lost. Izuku was 10 when he lost everything he ever loved. It dawns on you one day how beautifully fragile we truly are. A single moment is all it takes to alter who we are, forever. Yet, we never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory, destined to fade as time slowly ebbs away. Izuku learned just how precious life really was in that fateful night. It took losing everything he ever loved for him to finally see how truly short and priceless life was. Losing her was like having a hole shot straight through his heart. A painful, constant reminder of an absence he could never fill. He would henceforth walk this earth, if only for a short time, completely and utterly alone. This beautiful and stunning world, which he will never be able to see again, will go on without him. He will not be able to watch the sunset as his mother hums to her favorite song on the radio. He will never be able to see the mountaintops, the pine trees, the world. It's been 2 weeks since the incident. Nurses are starting to give up on interacting with him. This boy, once full of vibrant life, was nothing more than a husk of the person he once was. Izuku had completely shut himself off. He'd only respond if addressed directly. His answers were short and straight to the point. His voice quiet, tone icy as dull green eyes stared into complete darkness. His now milky green eyes held an emptiness that no kid should ever have. His gaze spoke of sadness and loneliness, but also of pure and blatant anger. Anger at the world who took everything away from him. The world that took his mother, his sight, and his dreams away. His lifelong dream of becoming a hero before the accident felt attainable, hard but not impossible. No one believed a quirkless kid could ever be a hero, but he was going to show them how wrong they were. However, now, sitting here in his hospital bed, blind and alone with only about 8 years to live. That dream seemed so far out of his reach. The social worker came in yesterday, informing him that given the fact that he had no other known family members and they couldn't get a hold of his father, he'd be sent to the local orphanage as soon as he was fully recovered. She assured him that they'd give him whatever he needed to cope with his blindness. The hospital had already provided for him a proper walking stick. However, they didn't know that he didn't actually need it. Over the past few days, he'd gotten the hang of controlling his senses, at least to an extent where he wasn't constantly overwhelmed by the onslaught of information his brain was receiving all at once. They didn't know about the abilities he gained from the chemicals in his system. The chemicals that were slowly killing him had altered his DNA apparently. The doctors didn't know how it was possible and what would be the consequences, but it happened nonetheless. He was somehow able to visualize the sound waves coming from any movement around him, whether it was the slow gust of wind coming from the window to the heartbeats of every living thing in his vicinity. He could smell the perfume of the head nurse even if she was at the other end of the hospital. He could sense the swift flow of energy and electricity humming in the walls, count the people present in the building by visualizing the heat coming from their bodies. His senses were heightened to an unnatural degree. He didn't know what else the chemicals had changed, but he'd make sure to find out as soon as they let him out of this place. He couldn't wait to leave the hospital. The people here were treating him like glass, and he hated that. He hated being handled as if he would break. "You're already broken," a voice in his head whispered. He shook his head, trying to kick those thoughts away. He wasn't broken, he couldn't be. He needed to be strong. He wondered what life was going to be like now. trying as hard as he could to ignore the dread pooling in his guts. He hopes whatever life had in store for him now, it won't be that bad, right? His life couldn't get any worse, right? He hoped so. Soon enough, he found himself being ushered into an old mansion. He could feel the dampness in the walls, smell the mold and weeds that were surely growing in the cracks of the building's walls. He followed the social worker up the stairs, leading to the main entrance, his walking stick clicking with each step. The woman opened the front door, the wood creaking as it scraped the floor with a hiss. Hesitantly, he walked into the house in which he'd stay until he was, hopefully, adopted. From now on, this would be his home. He hoped the people here were nice, that they'd care for him, maybe become his family. However, a part of him knew that no matter what, he'd never get back the feeling of being cared for, loved, as his mother once did. He'd never get back the feeling of pure and unfiltered safety. An old woman greeted them in at the reception desk. She stood quite tall and slim, her short hair was styled in a neat bun. Izuku gulped as he felt her eyes land on him. Her gaze sent chills down his spine. Even though Izuku couldn't see the details of her features, he could feel the frown that adorned her face. "Hello, I'm assuming this is the boy you were talking about?" Her voice was low yet stern, her tone cold and unwavering as she ignored him. Her attention solely focused on the woman beside him. "Yes, Miss Akane. This is the kid we informed you about. His mother recently died in a car crash. As you can see, the accident rendered him blind as well." "I see. Well, step forward, boy," she demanded in the same cold tone. He slowly made his way towards her, stopping short of a few steps in front of her. "Well, are you going to introduce yourself? Such manners will not be tolerated in my orphanage." "Hello, my name is Midoriya Izuku. It's nice to meet you, Mississippi." His voice didn't waver, his tone rivaling the woman before him in its dullness. She hummed in acknowledgement. He could feel her eyes piercing through him, taking in his appearance. Her gaze analyzing and judging him. "If you are to stay here, you will follow my every order, you will respect the house rules and make sure to do everything I say. I will not tolerate delinquents and disobedience. Understood?" she asked in a steeled voice, leaving no room for argument. "Yes, ma'am." He responded immediately, his voice lower than he would have preferred. "You will refer to me as Miss Akane. Am I clear?" His only response was a nod to the head. Clearly, the wrong thing to do. "You will speak when spoken to." "Yes, Miss Akane." Seemingly satisfied by his response, she called one of the receptionists over. "Now, you will follow Miss Luna here upstairs, to your room. Make sure to pay attention, boy. She will not be there every time you need to move. Your blindness is no excuse for incompetence." With that, she walked away. He stood there, now noticing the absence of the social worker. She must have left earlier. The receptionist, Miss Luna, her voice was soft. "Hello there, Midoriya. Don't mind Miss Akane, she's just a little strict. Now, follow me. Your room is upstairs. But I'm guessing you'd want to explore a little?" Taking a hold of her hand, they slowly made their way upstairs. He could tell the woman was uncomfortable, her breathing was slightly different. She led him to his room, his senses taking in his surroundings, making sure he memorized everything around him. He was going to live here, after all. As they walked through the wall, he could feel the lingering gazes of the people around them. Kids, smaller and older than him, would stop and watch them with curious glances as they passed. They probably thought he couldn't see them. Once they entered, she herded him towards a small bed in the corner. The room was small, but he didn't really care. With one last huff, she retreated back to the hallway, leaving him to settle on his own. Days turned to weeks as he slowly but surely got used to his new home. By now, he could navigate the building with little to no hindrance, his senses and awareness increasing by the day. The kids there were mostly avoiding him though. At first, they had tried talking to him, but no one had the courage to get close to the creepy new kid, the blind green-haired boy that never seemed to smile or laugh. They were intimidated by dull green eyes and the scar that adorned the left side of his face, crossing vertically, splitting his eyebrow and going all the way down his cheek. He could sense their nervousness whenever he walked in the room. He could feel their lingering gazes following his every move as if he was a wild animal on display. Their looks made him uncomfortable, but he couldn't get himself to care. Soon enough, they had gotten used to his presence and opted to just ignore him. However, not all the kids acted like that. There was one group of boys that weren't satisfied with just staying away. Rumors had spread in the orphanage about the blind kid that didn't interact with anyone. Somehow, they had found out about his quirklessness, and some of the older boys took it as some kind of challenge. The leader of the group, Denji, one of the oldest kids of the orphanage, was particularly adamant on making Izuku's life a living hell. He'd find one way or another to torment him, whether it was senselessly beating him up with his friends or just making fun of him and his disability and his worthlessness. Izuku cursed under his breath as he recognized the figure that was marching straight towards him, followed by two other boys. "Oh, look who we have here, fellas. It's none other than Midoriya himself," he announced proudly as he shoved Izuku with his shoulder. "You need to look where you're going. Can't you see I walking there, you idiot?" The boy scuffed, earning a couple of snickers from his followers. Wanting to avoid any problems, Izuku elected to walk away, keeping his head low as he hoped that this would be the end of the encounter. Life wasn't that easy though. "Where are you going, rat? Are you seriously ignoring me, you worthless idiot?" Frustration and anger were apparent in the older boy's tone, but Izuku kept walking. He didn't have the patience for this. However, this was the wrong move because just as he was taking a step forward, Denji used his quirk to attract his metal stick towards him, tripping Izuku in the process. Denji had a moderately powerful electromagnetic quirk. He could attract any metal object towards him. This particular power allowed him to intimidate and basically lead the kids here. Lifting himself off the floor, Izuku ignored the burning from the newly acquired scrapes on his knees. However, before he could steady himself, Denji had closed the space between them, using Izuku's own stick to hit his back. Pain flared down his spine as the metal connected with his back at full force. He wheezed as the breath was knocked out of him. Yet, before he could regain his bearings, another blow to the stomach sent him tumbling to the ground again, his glasses falling to the ground in the process. "Stay down, rat," the boy huffed, throwing the walking stick at him before he walked away. His two friends, each one taking a turn in kicking him and crushing his glasses before following the boy's lead and leaving. Izuku doesn't know how much time passed as he stayed there, sprawled on the floor. His sense of time was non-existent with his current state. Slowly, he got up, wincing as pain erupted from his newly formed bruises. Picking up his skewed glasses and his walking stick, he made his way back to his room. He could hear the commotion downstairs, signaling the beginning of dinner. Oh well, no one would care if he didn't show up either way. Weeks turned to months and it was getting harder and harder for Izuku. Every day, he would lose a little bit more of himself. Like the memories of his old life, the kind memories of his mother were slowly fading away. His thoughts plagued by the things he lost, good and fun moments replaced with more and more suffering. The only highlight of his days now were the times where he was allowed to hang out in the orphanage's courtyard. Going outside, smelling the fresh air made it easier for him to relax, to ignore the constant flow of information that accosted his brain. He could focus on the beautiful scent of the flowers and plants that surrounded him. He would sit there for hours, listening to the soft flow of the water coming from what he assumed to be a fountain in the middle of the courtyard, drinking in the radiating heat coming from the sun and enjoying the peaceful silence. Izuku had found the perfect spot, concealed by the bushes around him. He would sit alone away from the playing and laughing children, away from the world that surrounded him. He wished he could see the flowers again. He wished he could see the grass and the trees. He wished he could see the world again. He was beginning to doze off when suddenly he felt movement next to him. Stiffening on instinct, he waited with bated breath for the figure to say something. The man was tall, his silhouette outlined in a way that hinted and gave away a well-toned body. Izuku opened his mouth to speak, but the man beat him to it. "Hey kid, mind if I sit here?" The disembodied voice was gruff. It gave off an impression of an older man. Sure." Izuku didn't know what to feel about this. The man sat next to him, close but keeping a proper distance between them. "He knows everyone here, Their silhouettes had long since been etched into his mind. However, he had never seen this man before. "The name's Ryu, what's yours?" "Midoriya is Z." Silence hung between them as the man hummed under his breath, the tune oddly familiar. "You know Midoriya," Ryu began slowly, "it's a really nice day today." His tone was light and uncaring. Izuku didn't know how to respond to that. "Would you like me to describe it to you?" he asked earnestly. With a little bit of hesitance, Izuku nodded. He would be lying if he said that he didn't yearn to be able to see the sky again, gaze at the onslaught of bright and vibrant colors that painted the world around him. To see. Well, the sun is brighter than usual, the flowers surrounding the yard are made of every color you could imagine, there are roses and sunflowers. Beautiful, red and yellow are the most prominent colors here. There's a small fountain in front of us. The sun hits the statue just right, making it shine and shimmer in the heat. The sky is a perfectly clear blue, no clouds in the vicinity. Izuku can't help the pit that forms in his stomach at the thought that he'd never be able to see the beauty this man was describing. At least it's how I imagine it to be, kid. This, however, makes him pause. Imagine? What do you mean? I can't actually see it, kid. Yet, there's nothing stopping me from imagining it, is there? He replies with a huff. The slight change in his breathing makes Izuku think that the man is smirking. Are you blind? The last word comes out as barely a whisper, the confusion and shock obvious in the boy's tone as his expression twists in disbelief. Been blind for years. Ryu's heartbeat is steady through the whole interaction. This man wasn't lying. How can he imagine something so vividly and beautifully if he's never seen it? You know, kid, I've heard a lot about you. I've been here for a few days and the people here sure as hell talk a lot. He chuckles lowly. You've been through and lost so much in such a short time. But believe me when I say that I understand what you are going through. I lost my sight in a fire on one of my missions. It was hard at first. But my friends and family were there for me when I needed them, and believe me when I say that it does get better. You may feel alone right now, like the world is against you, but a little hope, some kind of determination to be better, to do better will go a long way. The words hit Izuku hard, knocking the breath out of him as his mind went a mile a minute. He wanted to scream at the man for thinking he understood what he was feeling, but he couldn't, could he? Ryu, this blind man sitting next to him, understood. He had survived an accident just like Izuku, even ended up blind. If anyone comprehended him, it was this man, right? Can he hope to get better? Is he not too far gone? Too broken to be able to get back up? What could Izuku say to something like that? A lump formed in his throat as the dam finally broke. Weeks of pent-up emotions breaking and rushing to the surface. Izuku cried that day. He cried for his mother, the most loving and caring woman he ever knew, the woman that gave up everything for him. He cried for a world he would never be able to see again, if only in his dreams. And finally he cried in relief, relief settling in his chest as a tiny ray of hope shimmered to life. Maybe he wasn't broken beyond repair. He doesn't know how much time passed as he held onto this man. His hands shook with every sob that racked his body, knuckles white as he clenched the fabric of the man's shirt like a lifeline. This man, this stranger, had managed to break through the walls he'd put up around himself with just a few words. Ryu kept whispering comforting words to him, rubbing circles on his back as he slowly calmed down. Time went by as Izuku recovered. He'd talk more and react more. The light in his eyes was ever so slowly returning. The blankness in his expression was fading away with every stroll he'd take in the courtyard with Ryu. Their outing had become a daily occurrence, the bond between them was growing with every passing second. This man managed to get through the boy's thick walls and was slowly saving Izuku from drowning in his own bitterness and sadness. These past few weeks, they had learned a lot about each other. Izuku learned that Ryu used to be an underground hero before he retired. He lost his sight a long time ago, while he was on one of his patrols. A fire had erupted in one of the apartment complexes on his route. However, the incident didn't stop him from being a hero. He worked hard and trained and learned to adapt, and he managed to save so many people because of his determination and hard work. He later retired when his age was no longer suited for hero work. However, Ryu couldn't stay forever and tried to see Izuku whenever he could. Yet, in the short time they spent together, the man had lit a fire in Izuku. His dream didn't seem too far from his reach anymore. The man promised Izuku that he would train him, he would help him hone his sense, and he would teach him how to fight and defend himself. The man would help Izuku learn that his blindness wasn't something that would hinder him. He would learn how to use it in his favor. It will require a lot of work, but Izuku was prepared to do anything to accomplish his dreams. Life was short, Izuku knew that all too well. He was going to make a difference and save as many people as he could. Even if it took all of his time and energy, he would become a hero. Time went by as Izuku recovered. He talks and reacts more. The light in his eyes is ever so slowly returning. The blankness in his expression was fading away with every stroll he'd take in the courtyard with Ryu. Their outings have become a daily occurrence. The bond between them was growing with every passing second. This man managed to get through the boy's thick walls and was slowly saving Izuku from drowning in his own bitterness and sadness. These past few weeks, they learned a lot about each other. Izuku learned that Ryu used to be an underground hero before his retirement. He lost his sight a long time ago while he was on one of his patrols. A fire had erupted in one of the apartment complexes on his route. However, the incident didn't stop him from staying a hero. He worked hard, trained, learned to adapt, and he managed to save so many people because of his determination and hard work. He later retired when his age was no longer suited for hero work. However, Ryu couldn't stay forever and tried to see Izuku whenever he could. Yet, in the short time they spent together, the man lit a fire in Izuku. His dream didn't seem too far from his reach anymore. The man promised Izuku to train him. He will help him hone his senses and teach him how to fight and defend himself. Ryu will help Izuku see that his blindness isn't something that may hinder him. He will learn how to use it in his favor. It will require a lot of hard work, but Izuku is prepared to do anything to accomplish his dreams. Life was short, Izuku knew that all too well. He was going to make a difference and save as many people as he could. Even if it took all of his time and energy, he will become a hero. The training was going relatively well. Miss Luna granted him permission to go out every day before noon. He would wake up early and go for a run. One day, he stumbles onto Dagoba Municipal Beach. He remembers going there as a child. With his mother. It was beautiful there, a great contrast from the garbage-filled beach it is now. Mountains upon mountains of trash were scattered everywhere. That day, he decided that part of his training would consist of cleaning it. He couldn't see the beach's beauty anymore, but maybe, just maybe, he could grant the others this opportunity. His mother would have loved it. Soon enough, it became something of a routine for him. On the weekdays he will go through his usual exercises and training while cleaning the beach, and on weekends Ryu would give him martial art lessons along with other weapons and self-defense training. Those self-defense exercises consisted of intense sessions where he'd have to focus all of his senses on his reflexes and his awareness. They trained for hours on end. At the end of the day, he came back to the orphanage half dead. However, with the bone-deep exhaustion came a satisfaction he wouldn't trade for the world. He finally has something to live for, to work hard and fight for. As the days passed by, he realized just how much his powers had changed him. His reflexes were enhanced, his senses were extremely amplified along with his flexibility and balance. One day, while doing parkour training with Ryu, he realized just how easy, how right, it felt to jump from roof, to scale the buildings of Mizudafu as if they were his own little jungle gym. The city quickly became his playground. Yet, training his enhanced senses didn't always lead to good things, because training made his range expand. Every night, he'd lay in bed, sleep foregone entirely as he tried to shut off his brain. To make them stop. The screams, the endless calls for help. Afraid and desperate for someone, anyone to save them. He could hear their pleas, their dying screams, their wishes for a hero to save them. Unfortunately, heroes never came to their rescue. Izuku learned at a young age that heroes didn't always save the day. They couldn't save everyone. It was so painfully true. His mother's death was living proof of that, after all. Izuku swore then and there that he will become a hero that would save the people that were left behind. The people that heroes couldn't get to. He will do it no matter what. After a few months of training, Izuku mustered up the courage to finally tell his mentor about his plans. At first, when Izuku brought up his plans of becoming a vigilante, Ryu immediately shut him down. He was a hero, after all. He wasn't going to encourage going against the law. Why would you want to do that? It's illegal, Midoriya. You'd be no better than a villain. You don't understand. I want to be a hero. I need to be a hero. But I can't. I just... What do you mean you can't? Of course you can. You're the smartest and kindest person I know. And with the training we're doing, you'll be ready for whatever the hero course has in store for you. Why do you want to resort to crime? You'll... His exclaims were cut off by Izuku's shouting. The boy had never risen his voice before. I am dying, okay? I can't be a hero. I'd be dead by the time I graduate and it will be all for nothing. I can't. Can't you see? I need this. What is the point of me surviving, of my mother dying for if I can't amount to anything? If I die anyway... The raw emotion in his student's voice makes his heart clench. He's never seen the boy this broken before. What do you mean you're dying? He asks carefully, dread pooling in his guts at the mere thought of this child's life ending. I'm sorry I didn't tell you before. The doctors said that the chemicals that got into my system the night of the accident are slowly killing me, destroying my cells one by one. They say I have until my 18th birthday before my organs shut down for good. Izuku's voice is strangely devoid of emotion as he informs Ryu about his sickness. It's unsettling, to say the least, to see this boy, this child, that he's come to consider as his own, talk about his own death in such a manner. Without another word, the man hugged the kid, sorrow and sadness filling his insides as he tried to remain strong for his student. Okay. He finally said, voice firm and steady, despite his inner turmoil. Okay. The boy asked hesitantly. Okay, I'll train you, I'll help you become a vigilante. Ryu clarified, internally promising to stick by the boy no matter what. His training went on for 2 years. By then, he could take on relatively anyone in a fight, thanks to his analyses and his fighting abilities. Ryu trained him with many weapons, but one of his favorites was Eskrima rods. He learned long ago how to use his blindness to his advantage. He focused all his senses on his opponent, focusing on every detail he could get, quickly analyzing their quirk, along with their weaknesses, even as to predict their movement by the slightest change of posture or demeanor. On his 12th birthday, Ryu gifted him a new walking stick. What was so special about that, you may ask? That particular walking stick consisted of detachable and reachable Eskrima rods, armed with a mechanism that can turn it into a sword if needed and charged with an electrical stun setting. By now, the beach was long since empty of its trash. Izuku's hands suffered from it, but the end result was truly mesmerizing. He could finally smell the ocean on his morning runs, hear the laughter of the children as they played on the sand, and feel the easy atmosphere that settled on the beach. It was all worth it. Izuku hit the ground with a heavy thud, wheezing as the breath got knocked out of him. His head spun as he tried to regain his composure. 2 years have passed since Izuku first met Ryu that fateful day. The now familiar voice of his mentor brought his attention back to their sparring match. Quickly rising to his feet, Izuku tried to form some kind of plan to win against his mentor. The man has decades of experience and a pretty powerful stealth quirk that also gave him a form of ultravision. In order to defeat him, Izuku needed to be both stronger, faster, and extremely focused. Given that without being able to hear or sense his opponent, Izuku would be fighting blind. Using everything he has learned until now, the boy charges at the older man. He can feel the way his opponent's heart rate speeds up as he prepares to move, feeling the slightest shift of air and sensing the other's movements. He knows how the man will choose to counter next. He easily ducks under the incoming kick and swipes the man's legs from under him. Ryu falters but swiftly regains his bearing and goes in for another hit. However, Izuku knew how to counter his hits now. He rushes in, swiftly taking his Eskrima rod out. He hits the man in both the stomach and the knee. Using his momentum, the green net jumps up. His enhanced flexibility and the years of training allowed him to perform a perfect somersault roundhouse kick. all in approximately 2 seconds, and the match was ended. His teacher was overwhelmed by the flurry of hits, gets sent back, tumbling to the ground, his hands rising to clutch at his abused cheek and stomach. However, despite the obvious pain, the man Izuku can feel the way his breathing is slightly different. He's not talking about the wheezing breath, nor the irregular heartbeat from the adrenaline rush either. He's referring to the grin the man has plastered on his face, the proud smile he's currently sporting. Because, in those 2 years, this is the first time Izuku has managed to win in one of their sparring matches. This is the first time Ryu has ever been defeated in over 3 years. The man clambers to his feet and approaches his student. Izuku shifts nervously from foot to foot, too anxious to actually say anything. However, he doesn't have to because the man does it for him. "I think you are ready now, kid." Izuku's breath hitches because of these words, albeit short and simple, mean everything to him. Because he's been training for years, putting his all in preparing himself and readying himself to do what he always wanted to do. Becoming what he always wanted to be. He can't help the slight shake of his shoulders, nor the tears that trailed down his unseeing eyes as he finally gets to do what he's been yearning to do since that accident. He will finally be able to do something, anything to help. To put an end to the desperate screams at night. Those cries for help. He'll finally be able to make a difference. His life, despite inevitably having to be cut short, will mean something. He'll be able to leave his mark in this world. He feels the familiar grip of his mentor on his shoulder, firm and steady. A gesture meant to reassure him that everything will be okay, that he's worked hard for this and that he deserves it. For once in his life, Izuku believes it. "So, where are we going?" Izuku asks as he tries to follow the man to the best of his capabilities as they speed-walked to whatever place they're going to. It must be pretty weird for the other people, seeing 2 blind individuals basically running through the streets. "You'll find out when we get there," Ryu replied in his usual deadpan voice. However, Izuku notices the way his heart rate is slightly faster. The man certainly doesn't seem like it but is apparently excited. Izuku just hopes that whatever the man has in store for him, it will go well. So, lost in thought, Izuku doesn't notice when the man abruptly stops walking. This leads to his full-on collision with Ryu's back. His extensive training and enhanced agility are the only things keeping him from falling. "Oi kid, pay attention. We're here." His mentor sighs in exasperation. Midoriya takes a moment to scan the area. They're standing in front of an abandoned warehouse. At first glance, it looks relatively normal and deserted. However, when he focuses, Izuku can feel the flow of electricity humming through the walls. Maybe a storage space of some kind? Why did Ryu bring him here? He doesn't get to pounder on it though because Ryu is already stepping inside. "So, Izuku, I'm not going to be around forever. I'm going to have to go back to America soon," the man says offhandedly. Yes, Izuku does know that. Ryu told him a couple of months earlier that at the end of their training he is going back to America. He has people there counting on him, after all. Izuku would be lying if he said that it didn't hurt, knowing that in a few weeks, he'll be back to being on his own. However, he couldn't always rely on Ryu. He needed to be able to do this alone. "Still, I wasn't going to leave before I made DMN sure that you were prepared. So." He pauses as he slowly opens the door. "This is my old operation base. Underground heroes don't always get to join agencies. I use it for storage now. However, I'm going to be heading to America anyway. So, I thought that it would serve a better purpose for you." Izuku's eye widens comically as he realizes the implications. "Do you mean that?" "Yup, it's yours, kid." Ryu replies casually as if this wasn't a big deal at all. But I couldn't possibly. You've already done so much for me. I can't take any more from you." Izuku exclaims, incredulity and confusion dripping from every word. "Nonsense, kid, you deserve it. You're my student, it's only logical to help you. This way, you'll have a place to go to train, prepare and plan your outings. You're going to need a place to hide your gear and your costume after all." Izuku may be blind but the grin on his mentor's face is painfully clear as he rummages through a supply closet and pulls out a duffel bag. "See, costume? Izuku whispers in disbelief as he catches the bag, trying not to squeal in excitement. Yup, I asked one of my old connection to make you one. It's made of reinforced shock-absorbing fabric, accompanied by 2 shoulder holsters for you eskrima rods and support pouches for your gear. The rest is up to you to make though, I didn't want my friend to realize who you are. Anyway, the support gear is also in there. I also added my contact's number. He owes me a favor, so anything you need you contact him. He already provided you with some throwing knives, smoke, and flashbang grenades. I even got him to add in some quirk-suppressing syringes. He declares nonchalantly as he throws Izuku some of the mentioned needles. Oh my god. Izuku finds himself, once again overwhelmed and speechless. Because this man standing before him has done so much for him. He had been there, a light in the darkness. Ryu stood by him through everything, has been there when nobody else was. He made Izuku believe again, he led him to hope. He even gave his dreams a chance, trained him and wasted so much time on his growth. Now once again the man outdid himself, giving Izuku a safe place to work and the protection he needs to do so. Thank you Ryu. Tears slipping down his face despite his attempts to hold it in. Before he can stop himself, he rushes at his teacher and engulfs him in a bear hug. Crybaby. Izuku hears Ryu mumbles under his breath. However, the words are filled with such fondness that it makes Izuku cry even harder. Now that he had the right training and the right gear, he was ready. He could do this. Izuku was going to make a difference. It's been a couple of months since Ryu left and Izuku found himself sinking back into the ever-present darkness. The loneliness and depressing thoughts are slowly creeping back into his mind. He thinks that somehow, he was destined to go through whatever short life he has, completely alone. Every day, he tries his best to get by, to keep moving. His life may be short, but he'll do his DMN best to live it to its fullest. It's becoming a sort of routine for him, to sneak out late at night from the orphanage. People don't notice the way he carries himself differently now. Even if they do, they don't mention it. Although, after a while, Izuku decided that it was time to just leave the place. Denji's tormenting was starting to get out of hand and Izuku didn't have the patience anymore to just take it and move on. So, a couple of weeks earlier he moved all of his stuff, which weren't many, to the warehouse, officially making it his home. He'd go out every night, dancing across the rooftops of Mizudafu as he listens for any sign of distress. It was strange how calming it felt for him to be out there. People around the neighborhood where he patrols started to know him, his name quickly spreading across the streets of the prefecture. Shadow was rapidly gaining the support of the public. However, this wasn't a good thing. With the recognition came the extra pursuit. The police is becoming a nuisance and he hasn't been doing this for more than a few months. It was all worth it though, knowing that his mother didn't die in vain. He knew he could handle anything the police threw at him. Ryu had taught him the beautiful art of evasion after all. Izuku started to treat it like a game of cat and mouse, albeit an unbelievably hard, it was fun nonetheless. The police department was getting more and more frustrated each time he got away. Still, he was getting better at it, every time. The head detective in charge of his arrest was a well-known officer. Tsukachi Naomosa is a simple man, respected for his efficiency and dedication. He even came to like the man after a while. The detective wouldn't admit it, but Izuku could tell that the man was having fun too. After all, Izuku wasn't harming anyone, he wasn't even really breaking the law. Since the definition of a vigilante is someone who uses their quirk illegally to fight crime. Izuku technically wasn't using a quirk. He didn't know what his powers were, but they definitely weren't a quirk. He got used to leaving notes for the detective to find, whether it was clues on cases, leads on some criminals, or just some honest-to-God-awful puns that made him laugh every time as he pictured the detective getting them. Of course, he couldn't really write them on his own, so he'd usually print them beforehand. The warehouse Ryu offered him was proving to be essential in his late-night escapades. Honestly, Izuku didn't know what he would have done without it. Most nights, he'd finish his patrols with at least 1 or 2 injuries. He was still getting used to the whole fighting bad guys thing, and things didn't always go smoothly. So, having a place to take care of his wounds and rest was a blessing. Not to mention that the warehouse was a great space for storage, since his arsenal was only growing. The contact Ryu gave him was more than willing to make him whatever he wanted. However, the man couldn't keep doing it for free, so Izuku opted to find a part-time job. It was hard at first. No one wanted to hire the blind, quirkless kid, but after helping the owner get rid of some less than pleasant customers, the lady gave him a job at her bookstore. The bookstore was a relatively small cafe, yet it was welcoming and cozy. It had an ever-present calm atmosphere that was perfect for relaxing and enjoying a good book. Miss Eleanor, the owner, has even decided on turning it into a cat cafe. It was a place where people got to enjoy their coffees as they read or just played with the cats. It was perfect. The woman had also gone out of her way and brought some books in Braille for him to pass the time with. His shift was finally over and his other job was waiting. After waving to Miss Eleanor goodbye, he quickly ducked into one of the nearby alleys. The night sky basing the world in darkness and hiding him from the world as he promptly changed into his costume. Going through the now familiar motions, he was done in a few minutes. He scaled the alley's building and swiftly took off running. The fresh air and the rush from the adrenaline made his heart leap. Soon enough, he found the perfect spot to check out the area. Settling himself in a seated position on the roof's edge, he strained his ears for any kind of unusual sound. At first, he picked up normal sounds. The barking of a nearby dog, the laughter of some children, honking of a few cars, screaming of a girl. He focused on the sound and quickly zeroed in on it. His senses all working in overdrive as he pinpointed the incident's location. Without a second thought, he took off, following the screaming, like a beacon as he hoped he wouldn't be too late. From what he was hearing, it sounded like a young woman being robbed. As he finally arrived on the roof above the alley in question, he realized that the woman was actually not older than himself. Her figure was small and thin. He wondered what a girl her age is doing out alone at this time of night. He didn't have time to think about it though, since he is deemed to act before anything serious happened to the girl. His attention focused on the man assaulting her instead. He was bulky and his posture stiff. His right arm was raised and the form was distorted as if he had changed the physical form of his hand. Maybe a transformation quirk? Now big guy. Why don't you pick on someone your own size for a change? He cooed darkly, his voice steady and menacing. He'd learned a long time ago to conceal his emotions in a fight. The man froze mid-swing, his head snapping up to look at the vigilante in shock. None of your business, midget. Go find someone else to bother. The man scuffed as he readied himself to proceed with what he was doing. His first mistake was thinking he could get away with hurting an innocent girl. Turning his back on Shadow? Now that was his second mistake. Izuku swiftly jumped from his place on the roof, landing in a rather brutal hit on the man's back, knocking the air out of him as he was pushed to the ground. Quickly positioning himself between the man and the victim, he stood in a fighting position. "Run," he ordered, his voice leaving no place for discussion. "Hide behind the trash cans, I'll get you when it's over," he whispered to the girl. His only response was a small whimper and the sound of running footsteps. The man grumbled as he tried to get back on his feet, barely making it halfway before Izuku kicked him down again. "Give up yet?" Shadow asked innocently, his head tilting to the side, reminiscing of a curious cat. "DMN brat." The man spat, rushing at the vigilante, a war cry resounding through the alleyway. "I'll take that as a no," Izuku quipped as he swiftly sidestepped the man, dodging the angry bull with little to no effort. "I'll kill you for this," the criminal yelled once more, making another move to run at the vigilante. Izuku at least has to give it to him. The man was stubborn as hell. Getting bored with the whole interaction, Izuku took out one of his eskrima sticks, charging it with electricity. He waited for just the right moment before hitting the man in the thigh. The man wheezed in pain for a moment before he crumpled to the floor in a motionless heap. Doing quick work of tying the man up and leaving his usual note to the detective, explaining what the man has done, he made his way to the shaking figure peeking from behind the trash cans. "Hey, it's okay now. You can come out," Izuku said tentatively, the steel and venom in his voice gone as his protective instincts took over. The girl got up from her crouched position on shaky legs, swaying a little before steadying herself. Okay, so, first of all, what's your name? Her body racked with tremors as she tried to speak. Viorika, she answered weakly. Okay, I'm Shadow now, I need you to breathe with me, Urarika. He emphasized his request by inhaling and exhaling out loud, waiting for the girl to follow his motions. Does anything hurt? Did he injure you in any way? Was I too late? He asked, worry laced in every word he said. And no, I'm okay, he didn't hurt me. The girl mumbled quietly, Thank you for saving me. Her voice wavered at the beginning but eventually settled in a steely tone. Although he couldn't see her eyes, he could practically feel the determination burning in them. Oh, don't worry about it. Izuku waved his hands nonchalantly, dismissing the girl's thanks. He wasn't doing it for that, he heard someone calling for help and he came. Do you have a phone on you by any chance? Oh yes. She stuttered, not expecting the change in subject. Quickly taking out her phone from her front pocket. I need you to call the police and tell them what happened, I'll stay with you until they come. But I can't be here when they get here, okay? Izuku knew that waiting for the cops to come would be risky but he couldn't leave the girl alone. That reminds him. He looked at the girl as she finished talking with the officer. Why were you out here anyway? Don't you know it's dangerous to be out here at night? He asked slowly, trying to sound as calm as possible. I got lost on my way home from the store. She whimpers as she explains and Izuku feels a pang of guilt for reprimanding her. It's okay, it wasn't your fault. Your parents shouldn't have left you to come home alone anyway. He replied quickly, trying to appease the situation. After all these years, he can take down people stronger and bigger than him in a fight but he can't deal with people his age. He was really pathetic. He was almost 13 DM in it. Why couldn't he control himself? His train of thought was cut off as sirens resounded from a distance. Quickly waving at the girl and making his exit, he scaled the building and ran back home. This was an interesting day. Now, standing in front of the pro-hero Eraserhead, Izuku thinks he did well. It's been 2 years since Ryu left and Izuku managed to make a name for himself as the mysterious Vigilante Shadow. However, this didn't mean he was going to give up that easily. Raising his hand in a gesture of mock surrender, he slowly edges backward. Each step he takes, the hero takes too. There's no way out this time, Shadow. Give yourself up, it's over. Eraserhead's eyes are glowing red. Previous encounters and his research on the man tells him that the man is trying to use his quirk on him. Yeah, that won't work on me, so you can blink or whatever. He finally speaks up, a tinge of amusement in his tone. Shock envelopes Eraserhead's features but the hero manages to steel himself again. His face going back to its blank expression. Izuku curses himself internally for forgetting his voice modifier. What do? Before the hero can even finish his sentence, flash grenades are tossed in his direction. The light blinding the hero and making him blink. Eraserhead tries to erase Shadow's quirk as the vigilante swiftly scales the building's wall but to his surprise and confusion, nothing happens. Shadow didn't even falter at having his quirk erased. Sorry to cut our little meeting short, Eraserhead. See you around, hero. He calls out as he retreats into the darkness. Unknown to him, the underground hero had finally managed to learn something about him. Naomosa knew this was a long shot. Apprehending this man wasn't going to be easy. He had managed to escape their grasps for 2 years after all. So, he isn't that shocked when he doesn't receive the signal from Eraserhead, nor when he sees the vague silhouette of the vigilante running off in the distance. He sighs as he finally gives his attention to the man sitting in front of him. There in his office, the hero is giving him the report on tonight's events. So, did he speak to you? Did he tell you anything important? Naomosa asks curiously, because in 2 years, they never heard the man's voice except when it was through a voice modifier of some sort. Tsukachi, I think Shadow is a kid. Aizawa still can't erase that voice from his mind. It was so small. So, this wasn't the voice of a grown man. This was a kid's voice. Are you saying that the man we've been chasing for 2 years, who fought and took down countless villains, is just a child? And this is the turning point, isn't it? This kid, he's seen and done so much. No kid should be put through that. Are you sure about this? His voice. Yes, I'm certain. Oh my God. This opens up a whole new set of questions. This changes everything actually. Why would a kid put himself in these kinds of situations? I've seen him fight. He's better than most pros, and the way he carries himself doesn't make sense. He told me not to bother using my quirk on him, said it wouldn't work. Aizawa ponders for a moment. I didn't feel the tug I usually do when I erase someone's quirk. Even mutant types send off some kind of signal. Do you mean, is he quirkless? Shock and disbelief are edged in the detective's voice. I honestly don't know. His movements and his reflexes. Do you think that his abilities are natural? Naomosa squeezes his eyes shut. He can already feel the headache this kid is creating. Shadow proves to be a bigger mystery than previously expected. Izuku walks to his 2 o'clock shift at the cafe. He sips absent-mindedly at his newly acquired hot chocolate. He would have brought a coffee, but he had a sudden craving for chocolate. Ah well, who could blame him? He smiles sadly as he remembers the movie nights he'd spend with his mom. She would make the best hot chocolate. She'd always put at least 2 marshmallows in it too. He shakes himself out of his stupor and his mind wanders to last night's events. Eraserhead had almost caught him. It was too close for comfort. One mistake and all of his work would have been for nothing. He needs to be more careful when choosing his patrol routes. It has been almost a year since the underground hero started pursuing him. His life has been harder every passing day. Eraserhead sure is stubborn. However, he can't deny the fun he has every time he runs into the tired-looking man. His ears pick up on a strange sound. It sounds like a fight is going on in one of the alleys nearby. He's so caught up in his train of thought, his mind focusing on the commotion, that he runs straight into a person. He curses under his breath as his balances tips and he falls flat on his butt. He hears the telling sound of splattering liquid as his cup slips from his grasp and he thinks he smells coffee beans. Apparently, he has cost the person their drink too. Speaking of, the figure, who he now realizes must be a teenager, maybe his age? He can't be sure, turns towards him sharply. Hey, watch where you're going. His words die in his throat as he seems to finally notice Izuku's cane and tinted glasses. Oh. Shinso watches as the boy that just ran into him gets to his feet, dusting himself off. Thankfully, none of the drinks had spilled on any of them. However, his newly acquired cup of coffee was sadly wasted to the ground. I'm sorry, I wasn't really paying attention. He apologizes, bowing slightly, and Shinso can't help but feel like a complete G. I should have been paying more attention to my surroundings and I'm really sorry. The green-haired boy rambles as he shuffles from foot to the other. The boy has messy dark green hair. He's short but seems to be well built. Muscles can be seen even under the black hoodie he's wearing. The kid holds a red walking stick in his hand and Shinso thinks he can see a scar that slits the boy's left eye vertically. It's okay, just. He sighs loudly. He's never been good at social interaction and outright yelling at the blind kid didn't really make the interaction less awkward. Be more careful next time. Izuku nods his head profusely, trying to convey his regret and apology. However, the scuffle he heard just a few seconds ago has stopped. Silence was never a good sign in a fight. So, he had to go. Yet, it felt like he owed the boy in front of him something. It was his fault that the kid's coffee was now spilled and wasted on the ground. So, before he can even talk himself out of it, he speaks up. Hey, I'm sorry again for the coffee, and speaking of... He shifts his walking stick between his hands, a nervous gesture he'd come to acquire over the years. I work at a shop nearby, and if you'd let me, I'd like to make it up to you. It's on the house and the coffee is just a few blocks from here. He senses the shift in the guy's demeanor, signaling some kind of shocked response. He decides to push on. I get out at 6 today, why don't you drop by? Silence is his only answer, and if not for his enhanced senses and the guy's heartbeat, he would have thought that the kid was gone. I'll consider it. The kid mumbles and promptly walks away. Izuku notes that the guy's heartbeat is steady. He waits a couple of seconds before dashing off. He has a fight to investigate and stop after all. It's 4:30 p.m. and Izuku thinks that the stranger he literally ran into earlier isn't coming. However, it's not 5 minutes later that he's proven wrong. He hears the now familiar chime of the door's small bell and the same scent of coffee and lavender accosts his senses. The figure goes in and sits on one of the small couches. He's barely in his seat and two cats have already taken a liking to him. One of them finds a perch on his shoulder and the other uses his lap as her personal naptime bed. The boy doesn't seem to mind and just picks up the menu from the table and reads it. Shinso doesn't know what he expected when he decided to check out the place. At first glance, Miraku, the shop's name, seemed to be a regular cafe. However, what pleasantly surprised him was the fact that the cafe turned out to be a cat cafe. He went inside and looked around, deciding on a seat on one of the comfortable-looking couches, happy that the cats here seemed to like him instantly. He picks up the menu and decides on what drink he'll have. Yet, he can't help it when his eyes wander from the menu he was looking at and towards the counter. There, a familiar mop of green grates him. The boy seems to be washing something at the sink and Shinso's respect for him increases slightly. Because he can't believe how hard it must be to work at a place like this, blind. He watches as the boy works in smooth fluid motions, his hands and body move as if he knows exactly where everything is and isn't hindered in the least. Not long after, the greenette walks towards his table. A small tablet in hand that has the cafe's logo on it. "Hey there, I'm glad you came," comes the way too cheerful voice of the semi-stranger. Shinso is flabbergasted for a moment, because what the hell? How did this guy know it was him? He expected him to treat him like any other customer, since he didn't even speak yet. Was the guy really blind? Yes, I am blind if you are wondering. The name's Midoriya Izuku. What's yours? I don't want to keep calling you the coffee guy in my head. He mumbles the last part bashfully, his hand instantly coming up to rub the back of his head in a nervous motion. How did this guy know what he was thinking? Shinso Hitoshi. He introduces himself in a monotone voice, proud of the way he succeeds in masking his shock. Well, Shinso, it's nice to officially meet you. What would you like to drink? It's on the house. I can pay, you don't have to, and I'll take a medium frappuccino. Nonsense, I told you to come so I could make it up for running into you and wasting your drink. Midoriya is silent for a moment. He seems thoughtful and a brief expression of guilt flashes through his features. I'd like to apologize again for earlier, I don't usually get distracted like that. He says that and somehow Shinso believes him. Given the way he was moving earlier, Midoriya seems to always be focused. Hey, don't worry about it. It's okay, I should have been looking where I was going too. Well anyway, I'll be right back with your drink. The afternoon passes smoothly and eventually, it becomes a habit for Shinso to come here for his coffee in the afternoons. A day's weeks pass, Shinso walks into the now familiar setting of Mirakuru. However, he's surprised that Midoriya isn't here today. He orders his coffee from an old lady at the counter. She tells him that Midoriya's shift was in the morning this time. Instead of sitting in his usual spot, he opts to go to one of the nearby parks. He kind of was looking forward to his small interactions with the other teen. Every time he went there, they would make small conversations. They'd talk about simple things, sometimes going on and on about the hero society. They never talked about anything too personal though. Midoriya seemed just as privy and sensitive about some subjects. He doesn't know what he considers Midoriya. Was he his friend? Could he really call him that? The green-haired teen didn't know yet about his quirk. Shinso couldn't help but think that once he found out, he'd want nothing to do with him. In the society they lived in, people judged a person by their quirks. They'd decide their fate as soon as they turned 4. A powerful quirk leads to having a good life. People respected you. They judge people on whether the power seemed heroic and useful enough for them. A person like Shinso was considered villainous. People feared him and deemed him destined to be nothing more than a criminal, ever since he turned 4 and got his quirk. He had a brainwashing quirk after all. The ability to control a person based on a verbal response. Shinso learned a long time ago not to expect much from people. Why would Midoriya be any different? His mind blanks as he suddenly notices the mop of green hair that's sitting on the park bench in front of him. The boy was wearing the same cloth he had on when they first met. It left Shinso wondering if the boy had any other clothes. Midoriya is sitting alone, on one of the wooden benches. In his hand is the red walking stick that Shinso's gotten used to seeing and a small book. His shoulders are hunched forward and he seems to be lost in thought. However, when he gets a closer look, he realizes that Midoriya is actually reading. His expression focused as his fingers move over the braille in his book. Shinso's feet move before he can stop himself. He finds himself walking towards Midoriya. However, as soon as Shinso takes a few steps forward, Midoriya's head turns sharply to his direction and he can't help the shivers that run through his spine. Because, at that moment, it felt as if Izuku not only looked at him but looked through him. Sometimes, Shinso wonders if the boy was really blind. "Shinso!" comes the hesitant voice of the barista. He gets up and somehow meets him halfway. "Hey, how did you know it was me?" "Lucky guess." The answer didn't really satisfy Shinso's question, but he moved on anyway. He didn't have any other explanation after all. "So, what are you reading?" he asked as he took a seat next to the green-haired teen. "Quirk Theory, The Evolution of Heroes," Izuku mumbled, his cheeks flushing in embarrassment. "I'm kind of a huge nerd when it comes to this stuff." "You like heroes a lot, don't you?" Everyone liked heroes. They were the pillars of their society. "Yeah. I wanted to be one for so long. It's impossible now though." Shinso noticed the way Midoriya's posture stiffened, his shoulders hunching down and his voice taking a dark tone. The teen spoke as if it was the absolute and irrefutable truth. They sat in silence, Shinso not really knowing how to respond. Because what would he say to this? The boy in front of him seemed like he'd lost any and all hope of ever accomplishing his dreams. However, before he could even come up with some sort of response, Midoriya spoke again. "What about you? Do you want to be a hero?" It was his turn to stiffen now. Because he did, didn't he? He wanted to be a hero more than anything, but with his quirk. Shinso guessed that now was as a good time as ever to tell him. "I do. But I can't," he settled on this response. "Why not?" "Well, for starters, my quirk is brainwashing. I can control people if they respond to me." Shinso turned away after that, not wanting to see the inevitable change in his new friend. He'd seen it so many times before. The exact moment people decided that he would never be anything more than a villain. The exact moment fear overtook their expressions and their friendship was ruined forever. He didn't want to see that look on Midoriya. "So cool!" the other exclaimed excitedly, startling Shinso, his head whipping towards him in disbelief. "Your quirk would be so useful in hero work. Just imagine the hostage situation you could stop with only a couple of words, the villains you'd stop without even resorting to violence. Why would you even doubt yourself? With your quirk and your kindness, you'd be a great hero, Shinso-kun." The earnest and honest response coupled with the sheer sincerity of Midoriya's words made his breath catch in his throat. This was the first time anyone ever believed in him. Believed that he could be a hero. Midoriya didn't even hesitate to talk to him, even after he learned about the nature of his quirk. It left Shinso speechless. He realized after a moment that Izuku was still rambling about the possibilities regarding his quirk. He couldn't help but ask the thing he's been yearning to ask ever since he got his quirk. Do you really think that my quirk isn't villainous? Do you think that I can be a hero?" His voice was barely above a whisper, his nerves getting the better of him as for once in his life he had hoped for the answer he always wanted to hear. "Shinso, no quirk is villainous, it's the user's choices and intentions that make that decision. I don't think you can become a hero." He paused, removing his glasses, and for the first time, Shinso saw the boy's emerald eyes. They were a dull shade of green, but they seemed to carry the light of the world in them as the boy finished his sentence. No trace of hesitation or doubt in his tone. "I know so." Shinso, for the life of him, couldn't keep it in anymore. He tried to keep his expression neutral, his face blank, he really did. But, at that moment, he didn't care to keep up his facade anymore. He cried, tears flowing freely from his eyes as he felt all of the emotions he tried to suppress rise to the surface. It felt like a DMN had broken and it wasn't going to be fixed anytime soon. Izuku, throughout his breakdown, just held on to him, a silent yet steady comfort. A promise of support and friendship through it all. Shinso was glad for whatever higher force made them run into each other that day. Izuku walked back from his afternoon shift at Murakuru. He was honestly beat. The cafe was packed today, and the amount of focus he had to put in just to do simple tasks was frankly exhausting. Luckily, Miss Eleanor seemed to pick up on his discomfort and gave him the rest of the day off. Sometimes he felt like the woman could see right through him. He was passing under one of the road's bridges when all of his senses seemed to flare up. His instincts screaming at him to dodge, to move, to run. He leaped out of the way just as a huge body of slime emerged from the manhole cover that leads to the sewers below. The monster screamed as he lunged in his direction. A size M invisibility cloak. Just my luck. The slime villain cooed darkly as he approached the teen. In one swift motion, Izuku disconnected his walking stick into his two eskrima sticks. Swinging one of them in his hand menacingly, he looked straight at the sludge villain, daring him to come any closer. The monster seemed taken aback slightly by the teen's behavior but didn't seem to think much of it as he proceeded to lunge forward. Izuku took in every detail he could get. The vibrations around them informed him about the villain's physical mutation. The man in front of him was made solely of sludge. Except there was one point of weakness. Taking in the information and acting on it, Shadow leaped at the monster, twisting in midair and landing right on top of him. His eskrima rod pierced something more solid than the sludge, yet not quite. His mind providing that he had just pierced the man's eye. The villain screeched in agony, his howls and pleads going on deaf ears. Izuku was about to deal the man with a finishing blow when another manhole cover blew up. "Do not fear. I am here." The booming voice of the number one hero resounded through the dark walls of the tunnel. Vibrating the structure they were standing on. Izuku couldn't help the flinch that overtook him. The man was just so loud. He watched as the hero apprehended the villain with swift and fast moves, quickly encasing the sludge villain in a couple of stray bottles he had found. Once upon a time, Izuku would be a stuttering mess by now. His childhood idol was standing right in front of him after all. However, his fanboy attitude had mellowed out over the years. Nevertheless, this didn't mean his respect for the number one hero lessened. On the contrary, his respect and admiration for the hero had only increased as he got acquainted with the difficulties that came with saving lives. Done with his villain takedown, all might finally turn towards him. "I saw what you did, young man. And may I say that the way you handled yourself was exemplary. You managed to find the villain's weakness and you took advantage of it, all while making sure he didn't get to you." The hero praised. Each word he uttered would vibrate the strings in Izuku's heart. "Oh no. I only did what I thought was right to survive," he mumbled quietly, making sure that his eskrima rods were safely turned back to his red walking stick. He couldn't help but feel in a daze. Here he was, standing in front of the symbol of peace, and he was actually getting praised. "Well, may I ask you a question, young?" The hero paused. It took Izuku a second to realize what was the man asking for. "Midoriya, Izuku Midoriya." He replied quickly, red already engulfing his face as he blushed in embarrassment. "Well, young Midoriya, are you by any chance blind?" The hero asked. Nothing but curiosity in his tone. "Yes, I am." Izuku waited for the laugh, the mocking of any kind. It never came. Even more impressive. All might exclaim his surprise, earning himself a gasp from the teen. "With your skills, young Midoriya, I have no doubt that you'd make a great hero." That was everything Izuku wanted to hear, wasn't it? Yet, it filled him with nothing but dread. His idol believed in him, thought he'd make a great hero. However, Izuku could never be a hero. Could he? It was a dream he'd let die years ago, along with any hope of ever having a normal life. His dreams shattered the day his mother died. The day he turned blind and he learned about his inevitable death. Hearing someone tell him he could be a hero was like giving him hope only to rip it away a moment later. The air in his lungs seemed to be sucked out abruptly. His heart drumming in his ribcage, making him think that it will burst out at any second. The ringing in his ears increased as his mind screamed at him to go. He couldn't take it anymore. "I am sorry. I have to go. I'm sorry, but I can't. I can never, not a hero, no." He stammered in his haste to gather his items before he took off running, ignoring the calls coming from the older hero. Toshinori didn't know what to make of the encounter he had with the green-haired boy. He had arrived at the scene expecting to fight a villain and defend a scared civilian. Yet what he witnessed made him pause. In front of him, he watched as a blind teenager took on a villain single-handedly, fighting him with calculated and efficient movements. It was impressive, to say the least. However, the crestfallen expression the kid wore after he mentioned his potential in a heroic career made him pause. He knew the moment he saw the kid's change in demeanor that he had said something wrong. But what was it? In all his previous run-ins with fans or even heroes, people would beam at any encouragement he gave. So, why did young Midoriya react that way? From just a few seconds, he knew the kid had potential. The kid was blind for Pete's sake. He can't even imagine the amount of work the teen must have put in to acquire such efficient combat skills. All Might just hopes that whatever the kid's reasons were, that he will reconsider. Their society needed people with drives such as his after all. 2 days later, the rain bore down mercilessly upon the heart of Mizudafu, pounding on the rooftops and turning the streets into a den of slick stone and muddy waters. It was at times like these that Aizawa regretted getting out of bed in the morning. He groggily left the warmth of his living room's couch and the coziness of his yellow sleeping bag in order to go through his night patrol. Now, jumping from roof to roof, slightly limping and utterly exhausted from his previous encounter with a villain. He promised himself a nice and long hot bath once he got back home. However, his plans were ruined when a figure slammed into him, sending him toppling into one of the dark alleys below. He cursed himself for his moment of distraction. Years of experience had taught him to always be on guard. Yet, the villain still managed to surprise him. For the past 2 days, Izuku had immersed himself in his vigilante work, not even getting any rest as he tried to get his mind off of his encounter with the #1 hero. It was days like these, though, that he enjoyed going out. It was pouring and the cold made the hair on his back stand on end, but he didn't care. It was there, under the rain, that his world seemed to be the clearest. The vibrations coming off from each and every raindrop made his image that much sharper, giving him the semblance of sight. The cold he would surely get afterward was worth it. Hearing some kind of scuffle coming from one of the nearby alleys he was passing, he expected to find some kind of robbery or mugging. What he didn't expect, however, was to find a man towering over an oddly familiar form. The figure's heartbeat belonged to none other than the man that has been chasing after him for about a year now. Blaring alarms shot in his mind as he registered the slow and dimmed heartbeat, followed by the shallow breathing of the hero. The villain raised his hand. Izuku could make out some kind of mutation. The arm was the form of a stinger, sharp and piercing, and it was aiming straight for the fallen hero's heart. Before he could think twice about it, he charged forward, going straight for the towering figure. He could vaguely smell the remnants of some kind of substance on the man's body. Previous experience informing him that the smell belonged to a scorpion's venom. This was Sting, the infamous villain that has been shaking the underground world for a while now. The man was known for his mutated quirk, Scorpion. It gave him the properties of a highly lethal scorpion. The mutated quirk was probably the reason why Eraserhead couldn't erase his quirk, Izuku noted. The man's heartbeat was erratic, and if the blatant smell of blood coming from the man's body was any indication, Eraserhead seemed to have put up a good fight despite the clear disadvantage. This was all the information Izuku needed. He instantly aimed for the place where the man seemed to be bleeding the most. Ramming his leg into the man's side with a force to rival that of an angry Ryu, he quickly went in for another hit to the man's stomach. The force of the blow making the man yell in both agony and surprise at being caught off guard. Izuku dodged as a kick was aimed towards him. They kept it up for who knows how long. The villain was stubborn. Izuku would give him that. They were both getting tired. The man swiped at Izuku's arm. He hissed in pain as he felt the stinger pierce his skin. Sting seemed to have run out of venom, his senses catching no trace of the substance, which was a huge relief for the vigilante. This, however, did not lessen the pain that flared in his abused appendage. At first, when he was still learning to control his powers, A cut like that would be enough to make him drop to his knees. His senses were so heightened that even his pain receptors were working on overload. Even the slightest brush of fabric against his skin would hurt like he was being pricked by 1,000 needles. Luckily, Ryu had trained him to control his senses and prevent himself from getting too overwhelmed. He could still feel the pain though. He retaliated with a punch to the man's throat. It was a dirty move and he knew that. But years of experience has taught him that in a fight, he needed to use everything to his advantage. The man stumbled backward, the air knocked out of him. Izuku took the opening he provided to deal a finishing blow to the back of the villain's head, effectively knocking him out. After doing quick work of calling the detective and tying the villain to one of the nearby poles, he made sure to leave a small note addressed to the detective. With that done, he quickly made his way to the fallen figure of the underground hero, sighing in relief as he heard the man's pulse. It was faint, but it was still there. He assessed the man's wounds, using his powers to find the source of both the smell and cause of each injury. It seemed that Eraserhead had taken a harsh blow to the head and was stabbed in the side. There was what looked like a big puncture wound in the place where he sensed the blood. He hoped that Sting didn't poison his stingers. Still, hope wouldn't get him anywhere. With practiced ease, he wrapped the man's head with bandages he carried in his utility belt. To his horror, the hero chose that moment to wake up. The man groaned, his head lolling to the side as he tried to move, to stand up, to fight. Izuku realized, "It's okay, Eraser, it's okay, you're safe. You need to stop moving. You're hurt." Izuku reassured softly. Even heroes needed saving sometimes. "What's Shadow?" the hero asked in disbelief. His features were scrunched up in pain as he was fighting a losing battle with consciousness. "Look, I need you to stay with me, okay? The medics will be here soon." Making sure to put pressure on the man's side, he easily lifted him up. Taking care of being as gentle as he could, he carried the man bridal style. Eraserhead groaned in protest, trying and failing to move out of Izuku's grip. "You need to trust me. I think that you were stabbed by stinger that was poisoned. The medics won't get here soon enough, we need to meet them halfway." He could hear the distant sound of sirens coming their way. He needed to take him to them fast. If what he gathered about Sting was true, the hero had about half an hour before the venom took its full effect. Making sure to not aggravate his wounds, he ran to the front road. Distant sounds of sirens could be heard. His mind was running 100 miles per second. The heartbeat of the hero in his arms was slowly fading. The venom was rapidly taking effect. They were running out of time. A hand on his shoulder startled him. He turned around sharply, fight or flight instincts taking over as the adrenaline slowly faded. He was met with the piercing gaze of Detective Tsukachi. The man seemed to be torn, looking quickly from Izuku to the man in his arms. Izuku assumed that he was deciding whether it was worth it to arrest him here. "Look, Detective, Eraserhead is dying. We can continue our very fun game of cat and mouse some other day. But right now, we need to act fast. There's poison in his system from Sting's attack and I don't know how much time he has left." Izuku didn't even care that his voice modifier was turned off at the moment, nor did he care for the way his voice was so obviously in a panic. The detective's eyes softened as he wordlessly gestured for the medical cart that was stationed just a few feet away from them. Izuku quickly handed the limp body of the hero to the EMTs. Relief flooding his system as he saw the hero finally getting the medical attention he needed. He turned to leave, but his path was cut off by the detective. He cursed himself for believing that he'd get a free pass. Tsukachi seemed to mull something over, however, what he said next made his heart stutter in shock. "Thank you, Shadow," the man said sincerely. They were simple words, but to Izuku, who's been fighting and trying his best for years while being heavily criticized and pursued because of it, it meant the world. Masking his shock with a huff, he winked at the detective, the motion earning him a scuff. He quickly made his exit, running back into the alley and into the cover of the darkness of the night. What he didn't notice, though, was the shocked expression coming from the EMT that had made contact with him. Tsukachi wasn't having the best night. His day started with his usual routine, boring paperwork and the usual back and forth at the precinct. However, that all changed when he got a sudden phone call. On the other end of the call, he could hear heavy breathing. The person seemed distressed yet strangely focused and professional. His worry skyrocketed when the individual asked for a couple of officers and an ambulance. He quickly informed him about the incident, giving little to no details yet setting blaring alarms in Tsukachi's mind. The villain mentioned having saved Aizawa from Sting and even managing to win against the villain in a fight. This in itself was an impossible task to accomplish since the villain has been on the loose for weeks now. Yet, the person had mentioned it as an after detail. He had focused on getting help for the underground hero. The call ended as Tsukachi suited up to go to the scene. Time was running out, Aizawa was injured and he had a villain to arrest. To his surprise, the individual was revealed to be none other than the infamous Vigilante Shadow. The kid that had them chasing their tails for 2 years now. The Vigilante seemed on high alert. He spoke in a hurried and desperate tone. The thought of arresting the Vigilante right then and there crossed his mind. Yet, seeing the way the kid held onto the worriedly limp form of Aizawa as if his life depended on it, he decided that leaving him be for now would be okay. The kid had saved Aizawa after all. Without him, the underground hero would be dead right now. His mind couldn't even wrap around the idea yet of Shadow, after everything the man had accomplished, being nothing more than a child. Tsukachi couldn't believe it. However, the man's voice was proof enough. His heart clenched as he heard the crack in the Vigilante's voice. It was the voice of a scared child. He was still going to try his DMN hardest to arrest the kid later. Nonetheless, he made sure to thank the Vigilante before the kid took off. He turned around, his mind set on going to the hospital. However, in front of him was an alarmed EMT. "Detective, was that Shadow?" The woman asked, worry clear in her tone. "Yes, it was." "What's wrong?" The EMT lowered her gaze to the ground, many emotions flashing through her expression. Finally, as she regained her composure, she looked up, her gaze solemn. "It's just my quirk. It allows me to see a person's stats, vitals, and medical status." She paused, looking towards the empty space where stood the Vigilante mere moments ago. "Shadow, he's dying." "What do you mean he's dying?" Aizawa couldn't help the anger he felt as Tsukachi told him about the newly acquired information. "Aizawa, you need to calm down. You're still healing. The nurses glared at me enough when I asked to see you." The detective muttered softly, slowly helping the man back down into the hospital bed. It has been 2 days since the incident. The doctors were baffled by Aizawa's survival. They informed him that if he'd been brought in just a few seconds later, he'd be dead. Sting's venom was known to be highly lethal. Shadow had saved his life. How can he be dying? A dying man wouldn't have the energy or power to do what he does every day. Aizawa asked again, his voice quieter now. Solemn. He just couldn't believe it. Didn't want to. Yes, the Vigilante was a pain in the butt. The boy was a problem child. Yet that's all he was in the end. A child. He didn't deserve this. The EMT that spoke to me has a quirk that allows her to see a person's health status. All the information she was able to provide was that the kid was dying. She explained it as though it would take a couple of years, but he was indeed dying. "Do you?" Aizawa paused, mulling the question in his mind a little bit. "Do you think that's why he's a vigilante?" That was the question, wasn't it? The fact that this dying kid put his life on the line, every day, to save others. "I guess we will have to ask him ourselves." Aizawa nodded, the detective was right. This wasn't something they could guess. This kid seemed more of a mystery to them every day. Every time he thinks he's starting to figure the kid out, something comes up and he finds himself digging deeper. Just what the hell has this kid been through? Whatever was going to happen next, Aizawa needed to find a way to thank the problem child. He wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him, after all. Izuka thanked whatever genius created the speaking option on his phone as he scrolled through his news feed. He was oddly surprised at how many times his name had been mentioned in the past few months. When he first started out as a vigilante, the public was in an uproar. People feared and mistrusted him. However, as time went by, the people had grown to rely on him. He was surprised at the amount of support he got from the public. People put their faith in the vigilante, put their faith in him to be there when they needed him. To save them. As time went by, cries of help, of random pleads were turning into shouts of his name. Shouts for him to come. Somehow, they knew that he would hear them and that he'd try his diamond best to be there. It warmed his heart every time someone called him their hero. He knew he was far from a true hero. He was an outlaw, a criminal. The government saw him, nothing more than a mere villain. Yet it was all worth it. The feeling he gets every time he saved someone. His mother sacrificed herself for him that night. He was going to make Diamond sure that it wasn't for nothing. He hoped that wherever she was now, that she was looking over him, a proud smile on her face. Probably a worried one too, yet a proud one nonetheless. It saddened him, the way the memories were close to fading away permanently. He couldn't remember his mother's voice. Yet he could remember her smile perfectly. It was one of the only things he remembered from the world. From the days before his world was completely plunged into darkness. He didn't mean to space out again. It felt like life wasn't on his side these days. When was it ever anyways? He sighed as he realized that he had probably taken a wrong turn on his way to work. Asking for quick direction from passerbys, he walked towards the coffee shop, hoping that today wouldn't be a busy day. Life can never let him catch a break. Can't it? He huffed dramatically as he tried to sneak into one of the bathroom stalls, trying his hardest not to bring the villain's attention towards him. It was a relatively slow day. He was preparing Shinso's usual coffee when the front door burst open. A masked villain rushing into the shop and taking the first person he laid his eyes on as a hostage. It just had to be Shinso, didn't it? Why was this his life? Quietly backing away from the counter, he did his best to run into the bathroom and change into his costume. He tried to ignore the pang of guilt he felt at leaving the customers and Shinso alone with the guy. He needed to suit up though. Izuku was glad that he always brought it with him. You never know when a psychopath was going to take your friend as a hostage. Right? Yeah, this was totally normal. Making quick work of changing, he quietly made his way back. Taking a peek around the corner, he assessed the situation before him. The robber had one of his hands over Shinso's mouth as his other hand held a gun to Shinso's head. There goes Shinso's chance of using his quirk. Izuku thought bitterly. Sirens could be heard outside. The police were surely chasing the guy when the BSDRD decided that adding armed hostage-taking to his sentence was rational. Izuku took his time to scan the guy's figure. The man's posture was stiff, clearly on high alert and desperate. Fighting him now was going to be tricky. A cornered man was a dangerous one. Izuku could probably take the guy out fast, but Shinso's life was on the line and he wasn't going to rush in without thinking it through. Izuku swallowed down his anxiety at the thought of his friend's situation. The guy before him didn't seem to have any physical quirk. If his choice of weapon and lack of mutation was any indication, the guy probably had some kind of mental or passive ability. His questions were answered when the door of the store seemed to rattle slightly, only to swing open a couple of seconds later. So, some kind of telekinesis? It seemed like the guy was getting ready to take off. Having acquired a hostage, all he needed to do was walking out. All Izuku needed to do was wait for the right moment and ambush him. However, Shinso appeared to have a death wish as he suddenly kicked the guy's knee. The villain howled in pain as he cursed loudly. Panic and anger overriding his features as he aimed the gun at Shinso. Izuku could practically feel the moment Shinso realized his mistake. Before he could think better of it, his feet were moving. Quickly dashing towards the pair, he tackled the villain to the ground, not even noticing the sound of the gun as it went off. Too busy pinning the villain down and restraining him to see the look of horror that was etched on Shinso's face. Not that he could see it anyway. Getting back up to his feet and admiring his work. The villain was strangely easy to take down. He didn't even realize that he was moving until he was on him. Yet, he couldn't help but feel like he was forgetting something. "Are you okay?" came a hesitant yet familiar voice from behind him. Izuku turned around to face him, his action eliciting a gasp from the teen in front of him. He chose to ignore it. "Am I okay? Shouldn't I be asking you that?" He countered cheekily, vaguely aware of the stinging pain he was feeling in his shoulder. "You're bleeding." The panic and worry in Shinso's voice was evident. "Bleeding?" He patted himself off, only stopping when his hand came in contact with his shoulder. He hissed in pain as a new wave of pain hit him. Now that the adrenaline from the fight was wearing off, he could feel it. The pain. So, that's where the gun went off that he got himself shot. "Do not worry, troubled citizen," he exclaimed loudly as he tried to ignore the now searing pain emitting from his wound. "I will be off now." He quickly ducked out of the shop, winking at the detective as he bolted to an alley and scaled the building, hoping that today wouldn't be the day he would bleed to death. Thankfully, the bullet had gone through and out. Nothing some gauze and wrapping wouldn't fix. He'll feel it for the next few weeks though. Shinso didn't know what to think about his savior. Shadow was a mystery to everyone. The man was famous for his accomplishments and saves. Some even call him a hero. They talk about exploits and skills. The way he always shows up. Shinso has been following the man's activities for a while now. He'd come to admire the Vigilante's actions. The man always helped when he could and never asked for anything in return. No fame, no fortune. He was chased by the whole police department and countless heroes constantly. Viewed by the government as a menace and a criminal. Yet the man-boy from the vaguely familiar voice he heard today kept going out there and kept trying to save people. Today he saw it firsthand. The way Shadow practically threw himself in the line of fire, literally, in this case, just to save a random guy from getting shot. Just to save him. He even got shot. However, this didn't mean that Shinso supported vigilantism. Logically, if every person who wanted to help decided to randomly go out there and put themselves in danger, the world would resolve to chaos. The law against public quirk usage was there for a reason, and a good reason at that. He hopes that Shadow wasn't hurt too badly. It was concerning to see the man bleed from a gunshot wound and not even notice it. Shadow spoke to him today, albeit it was a short conversation. The boy's voice sounded so familiar to him. It made him wonder if he had met the man before. He didn't think much of it though. Because what would be the odds of actually knowing the man behind the mask? It wasn't until the next morning that he found out just how probable those chance really was. He couldn't help but gape at the blood stain that was currently spreading on Midoriya's shoulder as he poured Shinso's usual cup of coffee. He kept a close eye on his friend that day. Watched the way the boy would wince every time he lifted his hand too much or held something particularly heavy. His mind was quick to form conspiracy theories, each one having a perfectly logical explanation for Midoriya being injured on the exact place Shadow was shot. Yet, nothing seemed to really explain why. Izuku couldn't be Shadow, right? The kid was blind for God's sake. How could he possibly be the roof-jumping, crime-fighting, butt-kicking badass that went out every night? He decided to let it go for now. He was running on one cup of coffee after a particularly bad all-night. His insomnia just made him paranoid. Yeah, that was it. This, however, did not prevent him from keeping a close eye on Izuku for the next few weeks. It only now occurred to him how much he wasn't noticing before. He'd see the way Midoriya's movement somehow always seemed strained. The days when he'd come with a slight limp or a bruised face, covering multiple gashes and injuries with long sleeves and his usual worn-out black hoodie. Every time he would ask the teen, Izuku would shrug and make up some sort of lame excuse. Things like, "I fell down the stairs" or "I tripped." This was coming from the kid that seemed to see better than Shinso himself, despite being blind. He also realized how he knew little to absolutely nothing about the green-haired barista. The boy in question never talked about his own private life. It made Shinso feel like their friendship was really one-sided. He had poured his heart out to the boy not long after meeting him. Curiosity got the best of him, 3 weeks later when he saw Midoriya leave for the end of his shift. As quietly as he could, he followed the greenette out of the store and down a couple of alleys. However, he wasn't as stealthy as he hoped he was. If the way Midoriya suddenly stopped and turned around to face him was any indication. "So, can I at least ask why you're following me?" Shinso could only stand there, shocked and speechless as the greenette continued. "Shinso? How do you do that?" he asked before he could stop himself. "Do what?" Izuku seemed genuinely confused. "Do this? All of this? How could you possibly know that it was me? Or that anyone was following you?" Izuku was quiet for a moment, a thoughtful expression flashing over his features as he seemed to decide on something. "Well, it's my quirk, Shinso. he finally said, making Shinso freeze in place. Because yeah. Why didn't he think of this before? He never asked to know Midoriya's quirk after all. Your quirk, Shinso repeated dumbly. What is it actually? Well, it allows me to kind of feel things around me. I guess I can't really describe it. I'm blind, but my senses kind of work better than normal people. I can hear and smell better. Stuff like that. The boy replied simply. Oh, I can also see the sound waves that resound from things. That way I can make out the outlines of the world around me. Oh, this made so much sense now. But he still had questions. One, in particular, that has been eating at him for a while now. Shinso debated if he should use his quirk or not, but thought better of it. If he was going to get answers, he would do it by getting Midoriya to tell him willingly. Before he could even ask his question, Midoriya spoke. Do you trust me? The question was surprising, to say the least. Shinso didn't expect the teen to be the one asking such a question. Izuku noticed the way Shinso's eyes were always on him for the past few weeks, always following his movements and looking at him closely. At first, Izuku panicked at the idea of Shinso suspecting him. However, after a while, he decided that it wouldn't be so bad. This, however, didn't mean that he was going to tell him straight away. If he could save his friend the trouble and burden of knowing, he would. I do. Well, if you really do, trust me when I tell you, not ask many questions. My past and future aren't something that'll be fun getting to know. What do you? I know you figured it out. You're smarter than that. But this isn't something you should get yourself into. My life is complicated. Shinso, for the life of him, didn't understand Midoriya. That's the thing, isn't it? I trust you, Midoriya. But you don't trust me. He paused, frustration and anger welling up inside of him. I've poured my heart out to you. I've trusted you with my past and my troubles. Yet you don't trust me. I know absolutely nothing about you and we've been friends for months. Shinso, you don't understand. Then tell me. Make me understand, Midoriya. He yelled, his emotions getting the better of him. Shinso. Your shadow, aren't you? You saved me at the shop that day. You've been saving so many people. So why? Why are you doing this? I can't know. It's not right. It's not right for you or for me. You should stay away from me, Shinso. Trust me. Just stay away. What are you talking about? You were my first friend. The first person to ever look at me and see more than just a villain. How do you expect me to just walk away? Because it's too hard. Okay. It's Dash. The smaller boy broke into sobs as he failed to compose himself. What's hard? Explain to me, Midoriya. Midoriya removed his glasses, his milky emerald eyes looking straight at Shinso, seemingly staring right through him. He could see the way the boy seemed to compose himself. His demeanor doing a 180, his emotions disappearing from his features and leaving a blank expression in its stead. Use your quirk on me, Hitoshi. The uses of his first name only served to make the request that much more serious. And my quirk? Why? Just do it. Ask me whatever you want. His voice was devoid of any emotion. It felt like he was talking to a puppet. Are you sure? He couldn't help but ask. Yes. Just like that, he watched as Izuku's eyes glazed over, giving his already blank stare an even emptier look. Hesitantly, he asked his first question. Are you Shadow? The nod he got in response only confirmed what he had already asked, so he tried another question. Why did you become a vigilante? Heroes don't always save the day and I didn't have a choice. The answer was short and simple. Yet it opened up too many other questions. What do you mean? Why don't you have a choice? He feared the answer he was going to get. I'm dying. These two words left the vigilante's lips and Shinso felt like he was being hit by a truck. The shock big enough to make him lose his hold on the other teen. The latter seemed just as distressed at having revealed his reasons for being a vigilante. What do you mean you're dying? He felt dampness spread on his cheek and chose to ignore it. I'm sorry that you had to find out this way. I'm sorry for letting you get too close. It's all my fault. Izuku seemed so small at that moment. Like untouched and the teen's demeanor would crumble. The doctor says I have 4 years left. Give or take a few. He laughed quietly. The sound was so wrong. So broken. Now you know why you should stay away. Shinso looked at Midoriya and felt like the biggest a-hole in history. He watched as Izuku quietly walked away, passing him by without another word. His body moved before his mind could even register the action, making him grab Izuku's arm before the boy could walk away. You're an idiot if you think that I'm letting you walk away. Shinso, I'm a ticking time bomb, and if you get too close. The boy put on his tinted glasses again. I'd like to keep the casualties as minimum as possible. His voice was unwavering, his demeanor changing back to the emptiness from earlier. Shinso didn't relent when the greenette tried to remove himself from his hold. If you think distancing yourself from me is going to lessen the pain I'll feel, then you can't be any more wrong. Shinso, don't. Listen to me, Izuku. It was his turn now to use the first name card. If the way the boy stilled was of any indication, it worked. You are part of my life, you've been for a while now. It's only fair that I'd be a part of your life too. I don't want to hurt you. Izuku's voice was so small. It spoke of years of doubt and fear. Then don't push me away. They looked at each other for a few seconds. Izuku seemed, for the first time, to be really considering him. Shinso watched as the greenette's eyes lit up ever so slightly before a soft "Wait" was uttered. Again, this time make sure to put your weight behind it. It won't be as effective otherwise. Izuku lectured as he helped his friend get back on his feet. For the past few months, Izuku trained Shinso. After all, UA's entrance exam was just around the corner. The purple-haired teen having dreamt of being a hero since a very young age. However, just as Izuku previously pointed out, Shinso couldn't solely rely on his quirk, knowing that the exam was heavily dependent on physical quirks. The UA entrance exam takes place in 4 days. Izuku trained Shinso as best as he could in the short time they had. Up until now, they'd made great progress. Shinso's stamina and strengths improved greatly. His fighting style had developed too, since he could last more than 2 minutes while sparring with Izuku now. Shinso still had a lot of improving to do, but Izuku was confident that he'd be able to pass the entrance exam at least. He still had a long way to go, but he was definitely on the right track. They continued sparring for a few minutes and finally took a much-needed break, both of them dropping on the soft sand. Shinso considerably sweatier than the greenette, the latter barely having broken a sweat yet. After all, they had years of experience setting them apart. Izuku gaining the Vigilante's attention, Shinso continued. Why don't you come to UA with me? The teen in question huffed in response, dropping his back onto the ground, milky green eyes looking straight into the sky, despite the blackness in his vision. Shinso. Midoriya started slowly, knowing that his friend was serious about this. People go to high school to prepare for their futures. I'm already doing hero work, there's no point in going to UA if I don't even have a future. The answer hurt more than Shinso thought it would. Even after all these months, Shinso still has a hard time wrapping his mind around the situation. The all-too-real sadness that engulfed his heart with sorrow every time he was reminded of their time limit together. Every time he watched his friend. Every laugh, every joke, every move. He'd try to enjoy the little things. The little moments they shared. It still wasn't enough though. It will never be enough. The greenette wasn't finished talking. Besides, I can't go to any school. Legally, I'm a runaway. That if I wanted to get into a school, I'd have to be in the system. They just make me stay with some foster family. Knowing that he ran away from the orphanage the first time, they wouldn't risk sending him back there. Would that be so bad? Shinso spoke up again, trying to convey his worry to his friend. He just wanted Izuku to connect with people again. Stop pushing everyone away. These past few months, they'd gotten closer. However, it still felt like there was this wall separating them. Izuku was still shutting him out. Subconsciously or not. Izuku needed people to rely on. He can't keep doing all of this alone. Silence met his question. He'd thought his friend had fallen asleep if not for the slow blinking of his unseeing eyes. It's unfair, isn't it? Midoriya said after a few minutes. However, Before Shinso could ask about his statement, the vigilante continued. I mean, it's unfair for them. I can't just barge into people's lives, Shinso. Join their family only to check out eventually. Only to hurt them afterward. The teen's voice was calm, as if stating facts. Pure, unarguable facts. I'm going to die, Shinso. When I do, I'd like for it to be as painless as possible, for everyone. What about your pain? His throat felt clogged. His eyes burning as he looked into the passive expression on his friend's face. His voice coming out sharper than intended as anger built inside of him. Do you ever think about that? My pain is irrelevant. Sitting up, the teen made sure to face his friend. I had a lot of time to get used to the facts, Shinso. Now please drop it. Whatever fight Shinso had in him evaporated as soon as his friend finished the sentence. The emotion flashing in the greenette's face showed the desperation behind his words. Same time tomorrow? Shinso asked quietly, knowing that the greenette needed to leave soon. They had established a schedule in the past few months. They'd go out on a run in the morning, spar and train afterward. Izuku would work at the coffee shop in the evenings and then go out on his night patrols. Shinso felt guilty for taking so much time from the greenette's time, but the latter would reassure him that he wanted to train in the morning either way. Yeah, but make sure to study some more for the written exam too. See you tomorrow. The teen waved as he opened his cane with a click. My shift starts soon. With that, they parted ways. Izuku needed to get himself semi-presentable for his day job. That process consisted of a slightly unpleasant trip to the gas station, getting himself refreshed, or more accurately, as refreshed as someone could get from public showers. He'd gotten used to it though. Getting by and working with what he had. He was grateful for the things he did have. The warehouse was God sent. Ryu wasn't even here and he still was the reason Izuku had a roof over his head. Although food, water, and every other necessity he needed to work for. He sometimes wonders if it was the right decision to leave the orphanage. Those thoughts would slither into the forefront of his mind every time his stomach grumbled on days where he couldn't afford to buy himself enough food. Every winter spent huddled up against one of the warmer corners of the warehouse. Every time he's had to scavenge the dumpsters for new clothes and every hour he spent working to get enough money to survive. He doubts anyone actually went looking for him though. No one cares about the runaways. They were considered delinquents, troublemakers. Like many others before him, he slipped between the cracks in the system. He'd been forgotten. The bell above the door rings as he walks into the coffee shop. Ah, Midoriya. Right on time. Miss Eleanor called out as soon as he stepped in. He had work to do. 3 hours later, Izuku found himself exiting the coffee shop and going into an alley. This was when his real job started. Making quick work of checking for any witnesses and changing into his suit, he made his way to the building's rooftop. The night, like many Monday night before, was quiet. Still, he did stop a few robberies here and there. Most of the time, they were small-time villains trying their luck. Normally, a quiet night was a good night. However, as time went by, Shadow couldn't help but feel as if he was being watched, hearing an additional heartbeat wherever he went. It started some time after his second rescue of the night. Someone was following him. Holding his Eskrima rods tighter in his hands, he ducked into an empty alley. A dead end. Stretching his senses, he detected a man crouched behind the wall leading into said alley. Look, whoever you are, I know you're following me so you can stop now. Tell me what you want. He demanded calmly, taking advantage of his anonymity to seem older. After a few seconds, footsteps could be heard coming his way. Impressive. I'm usually harder to notice. The approaching figure spoke. The man's voice gruff, holding a certain tone to it. A predator zeroing in on its prey. I heard a lot of things about you, Shadow. Well, Mr. Stranger, I can't say it's mutual. He could tell he caught the guy off guard, the man shifting his position at his words. Izuku didn't like the aura he was getting from the stranger. His heat signature was off too. Somehow, most of the heat was centered in his hands. Maybe a touch-based quirk? Don't try to be clever, brat. The man hissed under his breath, before gaining his composure back. I came here with an offer. You'd be smart to hear me out. I'm a very dangerous person after all. A villain then. You've been making a riot in the underground world, Shadow. Both heroes and villains are after you. You've been at it what? 2 years? And still no one seems to be able to get their hands on you. What can I say? I'm playing hard to get. Ignoring his comment, the villain continued. My name is Shigaraki. I'm the leader of the League of Villains. I want you to join us. Every word was punctuated with a step closer. Izuku slowly, undetectably getting into a fighting stance at the same time. You have skills, and from what I've seen you can hold your own against the heroes. Yet, you don't seem to actually harm any of them. I'm confused as to whose side you're on. Join me. We can tear this society down once and for all. Join the winning side. Look dude, no hard feelings and all that, I'm flattered really. But I'm going to have to decline. He laughed it off, hoping that this would be the end of that. If we're done here, I'm going to go on my way now. Oblivious to the mounting rage on Shigaraki's features, Izuku sidestepped the man. Speed walking to the alley's exit, already taking out his burner phone, wanting to inform Tsukachi. You're a fool. Shigaraki hissed threateningly, his hand latching into Izuku's arm before he had a chance to dodge. For fingers squeezing hard into his flesh, only the pinky was lifted. You think you can just walk away from me, you brat? Pain erupted in his arm, his nerves flaring as his flesh got disintegrated. It only lasted a few seconds though. The villain quickly retracting his hand before any real damage could be dealt. This is a warning, Shadow. You might want to rethink your loyalties. The next time I won't be as forgiving. With that, a dark swirl of something, Izuku couldn't quite say what it was, popped out of thin air, taking the maniac away with it. Anger bubbled in Izuku's guts. Both at the villain and himself. He should have acted. Should have taken the guy out. He didn't have proof though, any indication of criminal activity. No one would believe the word of a vigilante, even if the guy basically confessed to being the leader of an illicit villain organization. The pain in his arm only served to anger him even more. He couldn't tell just how bad it was. However, from the slowly dulling pain, he guessed it was only a flesh wound. Huffing out an annoyed breath, he made his way back to the rooftop. He needed a quiet place to patch himself up. So, he sat there, perched on one of the ledges looking down on the city below. Slowly wrapping his arm in bandages. He always packed some in his utility belt, knowing that he'd use them eventually. If not for himself, then for the victims he saved. However, just as he felt himself starting to calm down, he sensed the presence of another person coming closer to his position. His day just kept getting better. Didn't it? Shadow. A familiar voice spoke up. Look, if you're here to arrest me, I'm not in the mood right now. So, if you don't mind, I'm just going to walk away. All right. He called out before the figure could get too close. Getting up from his seated position, ready to bolt at any moment. Wait, I'm not here for that. Aizawa responded in a hurry, his voice wavering in the beginning, crossing his arm, making sure that despite his mask, the man knew that he didn't really believe him. What do you want then? I wanted to thank you for saving my life, Shadow. Without you, I wouldn't be here right now. Izuku didn't quite believe what happened next. The vigilante was pretty sure his mind was playing tricks on him. According to his heightened senses, the hero was bowing. Eraserhead was actually bowing to Izuku. Him of all people. The vigilante who's been nothing but a pain in the hero's butt. Coughing under his breath, he urged the hero to straighten up. The man rising back to his full height in response. Don't feel too special, Eraser, I would have done that for anyone. He tried to level the hero with a smirk or some kind of glare, despite his eyes being covered. Yet, Eraserhead seemed to see right through his act. You would. Wouldn't you? The underground hero whispered in something that Izuku didn't want to admit was close to awe. Why not become a hero then? You'd obviously get into the hero course. Again with that. Why were people that stubborn today? I'm no hero, Eraserhead. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to leave now. You're dying. The phrase wasn't spoken as a question. The man uttered the words as if they were nothing but undeniable facts. He knew. I think I'd know if I was dying, Eraser. Feigning a look down at his body, as if to look for any obvious injury, he continued his way off the roof. A medic with a health quirk saw you. You don't have to lie to me. The man's words were calm, but Izuku could hear his frantic heartbeat. If you come with me, maybe we can help you. We'll find a way. Why couldn't people just leave him alone? Help me. A sharp laugh erupted from his throat without his consent. No humor behind the sound. No one can help me. Eraser it. His tone was serious, leaving no space for arguing. With that, he took off, jumping from the roof onto the fire escape, making a quick exit out of the hero's sight. He didn't have time to waste. After all, his time was precious. These words never had a darker meaning to them before. The bell at the storefront rings as a new customer enters the coffee shop. A wisp of cold air enters the room, disturbing the cozy atmosphere held inside. Izuku instantly knows who is the person rapidly approaching the counter he was currently cleaning. I'm in. The boy shouted excitedly, his voice holding a giddiness Izuku loved to hear in his friend's voice. Yes, Shinso, I kind of figured that out. You know, with my senses and everything. He gestured vaguely to his face, emphasizing on the word senses. Besides, the bell blew your cover. The greenette snickered lowly. What? Shinso's step seemed to falter for a minute, before he straightened out, excited once more. No. I don't mean here, you idiot. The exasperation in his tone was palpable. I got in. I passed the exam. In Izuku's mind, he liked to picture Shinso as an over-enthusiastic puppy. At least every once in a while, when the teen wasn't acting like a tired house cat. You got in. Wait, as in, do you mean? I got into the hero course. Oh shit. You got in. I got in. They kept screaming their heads off until Miss Eleanor threw them both out of the store, yelling at Izuku to calm down if he wanted to keep his job. They were both too happy to pay her any mind though. Shinso had passed the exam. He was going to go to UA. He was going to be a hero. As much as he wanted to celebrate with Shinso, Izuku had work to do. He couldn't help the happiness that overwhelmed him for the next few days though. His best friend got what he always wanted. What Izuku himself had yearned for so long. He was one step closer to his dream and Izuku couldn't be prouder. This, however, meant that they didn't get to spend a lot of time together anymore. Shinso had school in the mornings and Izuku couldn't hang out at night. His other occupations taking up most of his time. Shinso was currently at school anyway. A field trip or something like that. Izuku didn't push for information. Shinso only telling him that it was somewhere on campus. At least one of them was getting the whole high school experience. It didn't matter though, he had a job to do, after all. So, that's where Izuku was now. Following a lead he got from one of his underground informants. The League of Villains were up to something. Word on the street was that they were planning an attack. Something big and soon. Where and how? That's what Shadow was currently trying to find out. The last time a man of Shigaraki's description was spotted was when he was entering a bar. Therefore, Izuku opted to keep an eye on the area for the last couple of days. When starting his little impromptu stakeout, Izuku expected at most to spot a couple of villains. Shigaraki and a couple of his lackeys. However, what he didn't expect was to see at least 4 dozen villains begin filling into the small building in groups. Something big was definitely going down. And it was happening sooner than he thought. Narrowing his eyes at the building in concentration, Izuku realized that everything was not as it seemed. The villains' heat signatures were all wrong. Given the sheer number of people who entered the bar, the heat signatures marring the insides were supposed to be twice as many. Something wasn't right. On a closer look, the heat signatures seemed to be dwindling in numbers too. The number of people inside was decreasing. Yet, no villain was spotted actually coming out of the building. His mind flashed to the events from a few weeks ago. Shigaraki had vanished by getting into some kind of mist. A teleportation quirk, Izuku's mind supplied. Which meant, if Izuku was reading this correctly, the villains were getting into the bar, only to teleport to another location shortly after. The attack had already started. But where? Hopping down from his perch on the roof of the building adjacent to the bar. He made his way closer. his ears straining to catch any bit of planning going on inside. "And wait to kill those kids," an unknown voice spoke darkly. "Yue won't know what hit them." A familiar gruff voice responded, glee and pride dripping from Shigaraki's tone. "Tamura, are you sure that they're going to be at the USJ?" The voice was distorted, the words echoing as if they were spoken from a hollow space. He supposed that it belonged to the mist villain. The man's heat signature was deeper and wider than the others, his form flickering in and out of existence as if he was made of burning flames. The sight would be quite mesmerizing if it weren't for the fact that Izuku's heart was currently hammering in his chest. The thought of Shinso being in danger made his blood boil. Yue was under attack and Izuku would be dead if he let the villains hurt these kids. His feet pounded against the concrete rooftops as he ran at full speed, leaping from one building to another. His heart thrummed against his chest, his breath coming out in frantic huffs. A great contrast to the rhythmic tapping of his feet as he tried his hardest to reach the fight in time. His mind going through 1,000 possible outcomes he might stumble upon, each one harsher than the last. Flashes of his friend, dead and invisible to his eyes. No heartbeat, nor heat to detect. No rise of his chest. Nothing. He picked up the speed, his heart stuttering for a second as Yue's campus came into view. Shinso mentioned that the field trip was on campus. He couldn't be too far away, right? Hoping his plan would work, he took in a deep breath and concentrated. At first, he focused on finding the place with the most heat signatures. Ignoring the main building full of students and teachers, his senses zeroed in on a building in the shape of a dome. He could feel the headache starting to overwhelm him, but he pushed through anyway. He could hear multiple voices now. Class 1A students were all on guard, their heart beating faster than normal in their chest. This meant the villains had arrived. Finally, his senses landed on the familiar heartbeat of his friend. He didn't wait a second longer before he took off, ignoring the nosebleed he was sure he was currently sporting. "Detective Naomosa speaking." Came the familiar voice on the other end of the call. "Detective, I need you to send heroes to this address," he started, trying to get his voice as even as possible to get his point across. "Shadow? Wait, slow down dash. We don't have time. UA is under attack from the League of Villains. Class 1A is trapped at the USJ. I'm going to go in as soon as I end this call, but I'm going to need help if we want to save everyone." He could hear the detective's sharp intake of breath, along with the curse he unknowingly hissed out. "I can feel something surrounding the dome. Someone is blocking the communication lines. You won't be able to reach me after I go in." "Shadow, wait. You can't go in there alone. Wait for the backup, I'm requesting dash." Interrupting the detective again, Izuku continued. "There are children in there, outnumbered and afraid. I'm not going to just stand here and wait." With that, he stuffed his phone back into his utility pouch. Without further delay, he crashed into the USJ's dome, glass shattering around him as he landed in a roll, instantly back on his feet. A couple of students were standing to his left, at their feet laid a prone figure. Injured but alive. The students, 2 girls and a boy, startled at his violent entrance but seemed to recognize him as an ally, relief evident in their posture. "I called for help. They won't be long now. Get out through the hole I made and wait for the police." He shouted over his shoulder, ignoring their shouts of protest as he ran down, his vision instantly zeroing on Shigaraki's figure. The man was fighting Eraserhead, his hand latching onto the hero's elbow. Aizawa's skin was already starting to disintegrate under the villain's touch. With a shout of anger, he kicked the villain away. Enjoying the yell the man let out as he was pushed to the ground unceremoniously. "Eraser, help is on the way. We just have to hold out until then." He could feel the man's shoulder lose some of their stiffness. Although he was still on guard, other villains were closing in on them, surrounding them. "Shadow, you shouldn't be here." Aizawa gritted out as he dodged an attack from one of the villains surrounding them. "I think a lot of the people that are here shouldn't be right now, Eraser." He quipped back as he knocked out one of the thugs charging at him. "Besides, you need all the backup you can get." Aizawa didn't bother with a response, instead opting to huff as he kicked back another villain. They were standing back to back now. dodging and fighting in a way that spoke volumes of the trust they had garnered between them. In the meantime, Shigaraki had managed to get back to his feet. His anger was palpable even from here. "You brat! How dare you interrupt my plans?" The villain bellowed, his hands scratching at his neck in frustration. The movements becoming borderline hysterical. The thugs surrounding them were almost all taken care of. Only a couple were left, easy enough for Aizawa to deal with. "Shigaraki, give it up. The heroes are on their way. You can't win this. Let them come. The symbol of peace will go down today. And if it takes killing a couple of brats in the process, all the better." The man screamed, "I'm going to have fun turning you into dust shadow." Shigaraki charged at him at a nearly inhuman speed. His hands outstretched, quirk at the ready. Shadow wasn't going to make it that easy for him though. Diving out of the way, he reached for his Eskrima sticks. The weapons coming up just in time to block the villain's next attack. Shigaraki's attacks were getting sloppier with each movement. The man's frustration growing with every dodge and every attack Izuku responded with. Izuku would have smirked if the situation wasn't so dire. He still hadn't seen Shinso. Sliding under it. Roundhouse kick, he swiped at the man's foot out from under him, effectively knocking him down. Aizawa had joined him then. The man standing to his left, having already disposed of Shigaraki's lackeys. "You're going to regret this," the man hissed as he staggered back to his feet. "Nomu!" Before he could even question what a Nomu was, a creature stepped out of a portal. Its muscular body hulking over them menacingly. "Oh!" was all that he could get out. His gaze concentrated on the new threat. "Shadow," Shigaraki spoke lowly. "Meet our most prized creation." Nomu, the grin he was sporting was evident in his tone. "How about a demonstration of its powers?" Shigaraki's words were punctuated by a hand gesture. In a flash, the Nomu was on them. Before Izuku could register what was happening, he was being pushed out of the way. His breath was knocked out of him, his world blurring for a second. However, he couldn't miss what happened next. A guttural scream resounded in his ears. A sound that he knew would haunt his dreams for a long time. Aizawa's hand was being twisted by the Nomu at an unnatural angle. The Nomu barely put any effort into snapping the hero's arm. Bile rose in his throat, the smell of blood and gore reaching his nose. Aizawa had pushed him out of the way. He saved him and put himself in danger instead. This was all his fault. He needed to do something. "Don't worry, little vigilante. I'm done with your friend. For now." Shigaraki cooed darkly. "However, it seems we have new players joining the party. It would be rude not to include them." That's when he sensed it, felt it. At the opposite side of his position stood Shinso and another student. Both of them crouched low on the ground, trying to sneak past the two villains. His stomach dropped at the implication. His mind flashing back to the dead body of his friend. Although, now he could imagine the Nomu smashing his friend's skull into the ground. He wouldn't let that happen. He ran before Shigaraki even got to give the order. He was already halfway there when he felt the ground vibrate at his side. Giving it everything he had, he leaped at his friends, effectively putting himself between the Nomu and the two kids. His body acting as a shield against the hulking creatures set on killing them. Pain, unlike anything he felt before, enveloped him, overtaking all his senses at once. His whole world reduced to nothing but one excruciating feeling. He could feel his ribs cracking under the power of the Nomu's fist, bile spilling from his mouth, his stomach unable to hold it in. His head cracked against the ground hard. His senses blurring together as he tried to focus on the world around him. Focus on anything other than the agony that was overwhelming him. "I hoped you'd do that," Shigaraki called out, enjoying the havoc he was wreaking. "Although, I hate to break it to you, little Shadow. But your friends are going to die anyway." With every last bit of strength he had left, he tried to sense what Shigaraki meant. Vaguely, he could see Shigaraki's form approaching the two stunned students on the ground. Hands outstretched towards the girl's face. A predator approaching his prey. Izuku has never felt more helpless. Useless to the world. 5 fingers made contact with her face. A beat, nothing. "Eraser. You're so cool, Eraserhead." Shigaraki retracted his hand right as the entrance to the dome burst open in a storm of dust and debris. All Might, followed by a dozen heroes, strode into the dome. All of them surrounded by an aura of anger and fury. Izuku let his spinning head fall back to the ground in relief. His call to Tsukachi worked. Backup was here. The events that happened next were lost to the Vigilante. His concentration preoccupied with the need to stay awake. Keep breathing. His powers weren't cooperating anymore. Vaguely, he could feel someone talking to him. The voice gruff and familiar, yet the identity of the person just out of his reach. "Oh, you okay?" The voice asked. "YUND Tizwayawak dash." Another set of hands came to rest on his shoulders. He tried to struggle, to push them away. His attempts were futile. "It's me, calm down." The voice was closer than the last. Tone wavering. Was that worry? "It's me, Shinso. Aizawa says we have to get you to the ambulance." The relief that came with the fact that Shinso was alive and unharmed quickly vanished as soon as he remembered just where he was. "See, can't." His voice felt like gravel against his throat. A taste of iron coming to rest on his tongue. "And no hospital, I need to get out beefo dash." Wet coughs fought their way out of his mouth. Heroes. "Shadow, you're injured and bleeding. You need help." Eraserhead's voice sounded pained, a hint of anger in his tone. "I'm fine." Disregarding the shouts of protest and the hands trying to hold him down. He got up to his feet, trying his best to ignore the searing pain flaring in his ribs and head. He doesn't know how he got out. He doesn't register his body fighting against anything getting in his way. He just knows that the next time he gains a little bit of awareness. He's staggering into an empty alley, his back hitting the side of a dumpster. He knows he can't stay here. He knows that he needs to get back to the warehouse and tend to his wounds. Yet his limbs are unresponsive. His body feels like lead. Too heavy to move, and his mind screams at him to rest. To just let go. The only thing he can do, before both his mind and body give up on him, is get his phone out of his pocket. He barely has it in hand before it slips right out, hitting the ground with a resounding clang. His arm flops uselessly to the ground next to it. He's then plunged into a darkness deeper than any he's ever known. "Please be okay." Like a mantra, Tsukachi repeats that sentence in his mind as he speeds towards the US. He's probably broken a dozen speed limits and laws. He doesn't care though. Not now. Not while a class full of teenagers are in danger. Not while Shadow, another kid, his mind adds, is risking his life for said class. To think that, when Shadow called, Tsukachi was thinking about how he was going to spend his lunch break. He sees the USJ's dome from a distance and instantly knows that Shadow's been there. There's a hole that goes through the middle of the dome. A fairly small, shadow-sized hole. The glass surrounding it glimmers under the sunlight, and Tsukachi can't help but pray for everyone to be okay. His prayers go unanswered that day. He's hurt. Aizawa barely manages to cough out as soon as he sees Tsukachi. Approach. "It's bad." Before he can say anything else, he's being carted away by paramedics. His mangled arm is still bleeding heavily. Although, other than the disintegrated elbow, the hero doesn't have any more injuries. Tsukachi's eyes widen and he freezes. It can't mean anything good if Aizawa is that worried. Before he can think twice about it, he's already sprinting down the structure, trying to find the runaway vigilante. The students said that Shadow fled the scene as soon as the villains were all taken care of. Depending on the information he got, Shadow was hurt, disoriented, and bleeding heavily. They said he was reacting to everything on instinct, as if he wasn't really present while making his escape. Tsukachi's stomach churns at the thought. Images of the kid, bleeding out somewhere. Injured and alone. The blood trail he finds leads him to an outside fence. It doesn't help his worrying. Each step he takes is faster than the other. Something heavy settles on his shoulders. A weight crashing down on him, the bigger the blood trail gets. Something stirs inside of him as he imagines himself finding the kid's body. A husk of the teen he once was. He shakes his head, his jog turning into a full-on sprint as he finally reaches an alleyway. Except, he doesn't find the body of an injured vigilante. Instead, he finds it empty. The only evidence of any past encounter, is the small puddle of blood that's gathered near a dumpster. He doesn't know if he should be relieved or even more worried. In the end, he just hopes that the shadow is okay. Consciousness comes to him in the form of a piercing headache. The blackness in his eyes seems even darker, if that's possible. He just barely registers that he's not in that alleyway anymore. Instead, on a quick inspection around him, he notices two things. 1, it seems he's at the warehouse. 2, he's not alone. He tries to get up but quickly regrets it. An agonizing jolt makes itself known in his ribs. Pain going through his whole body in waves. It takes him a few moments to recover enough to be able to get a word out of his mouth. "Hey Shinso, thanks for the save." He tries to keep his voice light, despite the pain he's in. Silence follows his words, although he's sure Shinso heard him, if the shift in the tension in his shoulders indicates anything. "Can I have some aspirin please?" he tries again. His attempt this time is thankfully answered. "You sure you don't want an X-ray instead? Maybe a psych eval?" The teen hisses out in response. His voice gruff and tone angry. In fact, he's never heard his friend this angry before. "It's not like I wanted to get injured or anything." Izuku can't help but mutter under his breath. His words are heard nonetheless. "Are you that stupid or just crazy?" Before Izuku can even think of a response, the teen begins shouting. "You literally threw yourself at it. Do you want to die that badly? Is that it? Do you want to just throw your life away? For what? For me?" The intensity in his words hit Izuku harder than the Nomu's punches. Shinsu's breath hitches like he's crying. It makes his heart clench and stomach curl in on itself. "Because if you're just going to kill yourself for me, I don't want it. I don't need this. Do you know how worried I was? How scared I was when I found you in that alley. I thought you were dead. Do you even know what that's like? To stand there and watch as someone you care about sacrifices themselves." The teen seems to realize what he said after a second. The tension in his body breaks and he seems to slump in on himself. As if broken by a spell, the anger in his voice is gone, replaced by a low murmur. Izuku, I'm sorry, I didn't mean why you're motem dash. Nah, you're right. I wasn't thinking. I couldn't watch someone I cared about get hurt. I couldn't let that happen." The nod again is left unsaid but is heard loud and clear. "I'm sorry too. Here, I'll bring you some aspirin, just don't move. Your injuries aren't healed yet." Shinso gets up to bring the pills and just like that, they're back to an easygoing atmosphere. Neither of them keen on staying mad at each other. Especially after everything they've been through. Shinso gets back a few moments later with a glass of water and a couple of pills. Izuku doesn't waste time in donning the medicine down. His stomach growls and he can feel the heat reaching his face. Figures you'd be hungry. You've been asleep for 3 days after all." Shinso chuckles lowly. "I'm going to go buy some stuff from the store round the corner. You need to get some supplies here, dude." Once again, he's left alone. After what seems like an eternity, but couldn't be more than 5 minutes, he decides to try his luck and try to reach for the cup of water across the table. However, as soon as he gets up, a striking pain erupts in his head. His entire world spins around him and darkens as he tries to make sense of his surroundings somehow. Everything is louder, more pronounced. As if the word sensations have all been intensified and put on full range. He feels the bandages around his wounded ribs scrape against his skin. The feeling amplified and agonizingly painful. Every shift of the fabric feels like he's being dragged across a rough concrete floor. His ears ring with a booming sound. It thums against his head rhythmically. He vaguely registers that he's hearing his own heartbeat as if on stereo. His hands shake and he unceremoniously drops the cup onto the floor. He braces himself for the inevitable cacophony of shattering glass. The tormenting shriek that follows. Yet it never comes. Instead, he finds himself in complete silence. As if he's been plunged into the water headfirst and his mind feels like it's filled with cotton. He tries to speak but he can't hear a word. His throat aches after a while from the screaming. His world is dark and oh so scary. For once in his life, he's brought back to that fateful day at the hospital. The very first time he found his world plunged into absolute darkness. Before he used his powers. before he was able to see it again. Now, completely blind and deaf to the world, he feels his life shatter all over again. He realizes with a jolt that he's never felt so alone, so scared before in his life. Not even when he was lying there, near the dumpster in that alleyway, bleeding and dying. He curls in on himself, trying to find some comfort in the isolation, the total nothingness he's been subjected to. His relief comes in the form of blissful unconsciousness. Shinso expects to find a lot of things when he gets back. Mainly Izuku being the reckless and doing something stupid again. Although what he doesn't expect is to find the teen folded in on himself, as if to protect himself from the world around him. He's sleeping unconscious? However, Shinso can see him shake. Tremors running through his body. Carefully, he places a hand on the boy, steadying him and grounding him. After a few gentle shakes, the boy, thankfully, wakes up again. Hey, you okay? What's wrong? He tries to make his voice sound as calm as possible. He internally cheers when Izuku seems to come out of his shell. I am fine. However, his relief is short-lived when Izuku freezes mid-sentence. A surprised expression overtaking his features. I can hear you? It's said in a questioning tone despite the obvious reply. Weren't you able to hear before? Familiar worry and fear gnaw at his stomach once again. Red flags flaring in his mind as he regrets not bringing the greenette to the hospital when he had the chance. Shinso, I think something's wrong. What do you mean your powers are gone? The panic in Shinso's voice would be comical if Izuku wasn't occupied with his own racing thoughts at the moment. I can't see like I used to, it's gone. Everything is black. I'm blind, Shinso. Fully. They can't be gone just like that. Izuku heard rustling. He guessed that Shinso was pacing. Maybe it's because of the hit you took to your head? Maybe you just need time to recover. The desperation in his friend's voice was palpable even without his powers. I hope so. They stayed quiet for a few minutes, both of them trying to wrap their minds around this new development. While Shinso was worried about his friend's health, the fact that he might have some serious brain damage, Izuku was thinking more along the lines of how he was going to proceed with his nightly activities. You can't be serious? Shinso exclaims in exasperation. What? I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. I know that. Look, sir, when am I going to go on patrol? Look. The teen is pacing now. His movements scream disapproval. You are not going to go out there until you get better. Who knows what this could mean for your health? What if you have internal bleeding? You could have brain damage for all we know. His words leave no place for dispute, and Izuku knows better than to try and argue. Okay, I get it. Promise I won't go on patrol until I have my powers back. This seems to placate the teen, if only slightly. Although, he can hear his friend groaning. I'm going to have to go to work. Food doesn't appear magically, you know. Okay, but don't overwork yourself. And if you feel that anything is wrong, you call me. Deal? Deal. It's 3 days later that he's able to get up without doubling over in pain. His ribs ache, but the medicine Shinso brought him makes the pain bearable. The walk to the coffee shop is hell. He barely manages to get there without bumping into too many people and walking into too many lampposts. However, he does make it there in the end. He's grown so used to living with the help of his powers that the sudden loss leaves an emptiness in his mind. The world is dark and empty, and he hates it with his entire being. He walks into the shop. His walking stick is basically an extension to his hand by now. He doesn't put it away like usual. Instead, he uses it to get to the counter safely. The vague memory of the shop's layout does help him though. He hears someone walk up to the counter behind him. He doesn't know who it is until they speak up. He ignores the unnerving vulnerability he's feeling without his abilities. Midoriya. Eleanor's voice is even measured. Where have you been? Do you honestly think you can disappear on me for weeks and just get back to work like nothing happened? There it is. He forgot about that. Although, in his defense, his day job wasn't his priority while he was dying. He thinks she says something about responsibility, but whatever she said next is a blur in his memory. His mind too focused on one particular word that stood out during her speech. You're fired, she says with a hint of anger, her composure never swaying throughout her speech. Finish your shift today and then you're done. Fired. This was bad. The rest of his shift goes by in a blur. His mind going a mile a minute with his current predicament. He needs his job. He needs the money to survive. If it weren't for Ryu's warehouse, he'd be homeless right now. Not to mention his need for support items and food. He checked his supplies before going out today. He's almost out. He was relying on his weekly salary to be able to get by. This was really bad. He's making what he thinks is an iced coffee when the mug accidentally slips between his fingers. It crashes onto the ground with a resounding clang. Shards of glass shatter on the floor with a cacophony of chimes. He doesn't register the flash of pain he gets when the scorching liquid makes contact with his hands. The stinging in his fingers when he accidentally cuts them on the broken shards. He's too lost in thought to actually realize what he's doing. The coffee shop has gone strangely quiet, some murmurs going through the room. A hand on his shoulder surprises him. He barely manages to suppress a flinch when the unknown figure tries to usher him away. Tentative hands guiding him away from the fallen pieces. Izuku takes a couple of steps back. His body unconsciously reacting to the unknown entity. Flight instincts taking over. Although he doesn't get far before he's bumping into another person. His stomach drops when he hears who it is. Enough, Midoriya. Just get out of here. Eleanor's voice is cold. He thinks it's a great contrast to the kind women who gave him this job all these months ago. He supposes he can't really blame her though. He hasn't been the greatest employee. She hands him his discarded walking stick and he doesn't linger a moment longer before bolting out of there. He thinks he hears someone calling out to him but he can't be sure. He doesn't have it in him to care. It's been a long time since he's felt this useless. He walks in no particular direction. A vague whisper in his mind warns him about getting lost. He doesn't pay it any mind though. His feet hit the asphalt in tandem with his walking stick. The clicking is grounding. He wills his mind to focus on the familiar sound, trying his best to clear his thoughts. He doesn't need panic right now. He needs to get another job. Needs to find some kind of solution. He bumps into someone on the sidewalk and his mind takes him somewhere he hasn't been in a while. It happens again and this time he can't help but dwell on the memories. He remembers his first few weeks at the orphanage. He remembers his uncontrollable powers. The unbearable sensory overloads he used to go through. The blackouts that would follow afterward. The days of complete blindness when he couldn't get his senses under control. He recalls the 2 loud nights when his hearing acted up. He thinks of Denji's attempts at humor. The days he'd get cornered in the boys' locker room. One particular event stands out more than the rest though. That day he decided to work harder than ever to control his powers. He remembers the promise he made himself that day. The promise to never feel so vulnerable and helpless ever again. Denji and his lackeys had snuck up behind him in the locker room. They kept quiet and waited. They watched as Izuku got ready for his shower. His powers weren't cooperating with him back then. He'd just gone through a particularly bad sensory overload. The result was an even longer blackout. He was completely blind that day. He remembers thinking he was alone. He also remembers the sudden noises that would go through the lockers. Metal creaking from every direction. The fear that shot through him with every clang was the most prominent in his memories. Every unknown sound making his hair stand on end. He remembers himself calling out for them to stop. To just leave him alone. The only response he'd get was louder noises from unexpected directions. The next thing he remembers is cowering into the room's corner. His hands buried in his hair, fingers digging into his skull. As he cried out for them to just stop. Laughter was their response. Cruel and loud. That's how the head of the house found him that night. Curled up on the cold tiles of the locker room floor. He got a month of cleaning duties for skipping dinner. He's broken out of his spiral down memory lane by the sounds of screeching tires and people shouting. He figures he's breaking that promise right about now. Gray carpeted the sky as Todoroki walked on the sidewalk. His head held back, eyes gazing onto the onslaught of clouds forming in the vicinity. The gloomy weather mirrored his own emotions and threatened the world with a rainy night to come. It spoke volumes that Todoroki would rather walk out into this weather than stay at home with his father. To other people, Todoroki would seem to be a normal teenager, if only a little peculiar with his mismatched red and white hair. Although if you looked close enough, you'd notice the way he favored his left leg, the stiffness in every step he took and the tension held in his shoulders as if he bore the weight of the world. After the attack on the USJ, his father took it upon himself to intensify his training. The number 2 hero wanting his son to get stronger. So that, in the man's exact words, he'd crush the villains who dared attack him next time. He hated his father with a burning passion. Hated everything about the so-called hero. So, when Endeavor got a phone call, he took it as an opportunity to bolt right out of there. He needed to clear his mind, and for the first time, Todoroki found himself walking into a cat cafe. Mirakuru seemed like a normal coffee shop. If only for the cats that lounged around the place lazily. The owner seemed to be busy talking to a boy when he walked in, so he took it upon himself to find a seat. However, he couldn't help but watch the interaction between the two. Although, from a closer look, it seemed it was more of a one-sided speech. The old lady hadn't even noticed that her words were going on deaf ears. He watched, attention-rapt, as the boy walked to the counter as if on autopilot. His movements stiff and uncertain. His walking stick clicking against the tiled floor with every step. Feeling a little creepy, he decided to stop staring at the kid. His blindness wasn't an invitation to stare after all. The calmness and coziness of the shop eased some of the anger he was feeling. The tension in his body subsiding with every cat that huddled near his left side. His quirk was a perfect haven for the small creatures. However, the calm atmosphere was abruptly broken by the sound of shattering glass. The noise effectively startling him out of his reverie. Looking towards the source of the noise, he couldn't help the unease he felt. The green-haired boy from earlier was crouched on the floor. Hands patting the space around him as if searching for the falling shards of glass. His fingers were red, bleeding from various cuts. Not that he seemed to notice. Not wanting the boy to hurt himself further, he got up and tried to usher him away. Although that seemed to be the wrong move. If the way the boy flinched and backed away was of any indication. The boy then promptly ran into the lady from earlier. The women didn't even pay his distress any mind. Ignoring the injured employee's needs, she opted to kick him out on the spot. The boy, Midoriya, she called him, took off right after that. Not even stopping when Todoroki tried to make sure he was okay. Every bone in his body told him to follow the teen. Run after him. Do anything to help. However, he had a bill to pay, and by the time he made it out of the store, the teen was already long gone. Todoroki chose to walk for a while. If only to clear his mind from the events he just witnessed. He'd been walking for a few minutes when he saw it. Saw him. The same blind teen who was at the coffee shop was now right in front of him. Walking at a faster pace. Carelessly bumping into people left and right as he made his way through the busy street. His walking stick was clenched tightly in his hand. He didn't even seem to know where he was going. However, what worried him the most was the fact that the greenette was currently walking right into traffic. His body moved before his mind could even catch up. His hand outstretched, reaching for the boy just as a car swerved. A loud honking sound resounded in his ears, but he paid it no mind. His mind too focused on his goal. He had to get this kid out of the way. Time seemed to slow to a stop. His movements practically going in slow motion as his hand gripped Midoriya's shirt. What happened next could only be described as a blur of movement. He remembers pulling the kid back. Putting all his strengths in the action. A screeching sound resounded through the street. People screaming as they watched the scene before them. Pain flares in his shoulder as he hits the ground. The rough landing knocking the breath out of him. The car stops a few feet in front of them. Right past the same spot they were standing on only a few moments ago. He looks to his left. Towards the kid he'd pulled down with him. The teen's milky green eyes are blown wide. Frantic and confused. His glasses lay discarded a few steps in front of him. Cracked from the impact with the concrete ground. Someone speaks to them, asking them if they're okay. Yet, Todoroki can't bring himself to answer. He's too focused on the boy next to him. Watching the teen's shuddering breath. Noticing the shake in his shoulders. the fear buried deep in those unseeing eyes. "Are you okay?" he asks quietly, not wanting to startle him any further. The teen flinches anyway. His head jerks to look in his direction, his eyes missing him by just a few centimeters. As if looking over his shoulder, he opens his mouth to answer, but closes it after a few moments, not seeming to find his voice just yet. Instead, he nods his head. "Thanks," he says after a few minutes. I wasn't paying attention." His voice is soft, breathless. Todoroki nods his acknowledgement, but feels incredibly stupid when he realizes his mistake. "Yes. It's okay. Just be more careful." He doesn't intend for it to come off as a scolding, but with his tone, he can't help it. "I mean, you could have gotten hurt. Or worse." He mumbles. "Oh, yes, I will." The teen gets back up with surprising ease. The tremor in his body, Todoroki notices, is gone now. It's as if nothing happened. As if he hadn't just nearly died. "I'm just not having the best day." His voice comes out low and soft. Suddenly he seems really tired. "Anyway, thanks again for the save." His tone seems cheerful, but the tightness in his eyes is telling a different story. "What's your name, hero?" "Yeah. I know, I saw you back at the coffee shop." Midoriya looks sheepish at that. "And I'm not a hero." "Not yet. He's barely a first year at UA, after all. I'm a UA student." Todoroki Shuto. "Ah, so you saw that, huh?" He chuckles, the sound comes out wrong, empty of any distinct emotion. "Well, it seems you chose the right course, hero." He smiles a little at that. Todoroki goes to correct him again, but the teen is already walking away. "Although I gotta be honest with you, not a big fan of your father." Shuto's shocked expression goes unnoticed. "Well, anyway." The green net continues before the fire and ice user can comment. "I got to go now, see you around, Todoroki." Izuku doesn't really get what happened. Doesn't understand it. He thought he was going to get hit by a car, but instead he finds himself being shoved to the ground. Voices and sounds muddled together. His senses flaring all at once. It's only for a few seconds, but they were back. His powers were there. That is, until they weren't again. He hits the ground hard. Pain flares in multiple parts of his body. He doesn't really feel it though. His senses too focused on the thumping sound next to him. Frantic and fast. Probably his savior's heartbeat. For a few seconds, the world is clear. He sees the outlines of people gathered in front of them on the street. Sees the form of the vehicle that nearly killed him. However, his powers are gone before he can even begin to realize that they were back. It's something though. A spark of hope. Hope that his powers aren't gone forever. He feels it throughout his conversation with the teen student that saved him. Probably one of Shinso's classmates. He feels it in the way his hearing intensifies in spades during the whole interaction. Senses it in the way echoes flashes in the darkness of his vision. Small, random outbursts of vibration echoing around him. It's blurry, distant. But it's there. And it's something. Bidding the teen goodbye. Even going as far as to tease him about the save and commenting on his father. He takes off. He wants to call Shinso, tell him what happened. He needs to clear his mind. He needs someone to help him keep his thoughts at bay. He needs his best friend to help him find some kind of way out of this mess he calls his life. His phone luckily survived the fall, more than he can say about his glasses though. Therefore, he sends the boy a voicemail and a location, telling him to come pick him up. He doesn't want to admit it, but he's completely lost. He figures that's what happens when he walks around without paying attention. He hates it. Feeling this vulnerable. This dependent on people. He doesn't let his mind wander this time though. He doesn't want a repeat of the events from earlier. He couldn't take it. Having to relive everything all over again. Shinso tells him that he'll be there in a few minutes, and once again, Izuku can't help but feel grateful. He doesn't know what he would have done without him in his life. His walking stick hits something and he feels some sort of bench. He opts to rest on it while waiting. Wind picks up around him. The cool air hits his face, ruffling his already untamable curls. It's probably going to rain soon. Sitting there, it hits him all at once. Everything just crashes into him like a wave. A deep-rooted weariness settles in his shoulders. A weight too heavy for his body to bear. He just feels so tired. His body aches all over from both his newly acquired injuries and his old ones. The cuts on his fingers sting, reminding him of the impending dilemma he's going to have to face eventually. His head throbs from both the fall he took and the rising sensitivity in his mind. He hears someone walk up to the bench he's sitting on. The person stopping short a few steps in front of him. "You look like hell." He doesn't know if he should feel offended or relieved at the new arrival. He goes for the latter. Shinso's company reassures him. "Shinso." If the lavender-haired teen hears the slight crack in his voice, he doesn't comment on it. Instead, he simply and wordlessly takes a seat next to him on the bench. He feels the weight next to him slump further down and he knows what the teen is waiting for. Slowly but surely, Izuku leans backward and settles his head on the boy's shoulder. They sit there, in comfortable silence as Izuku takes his time to form his thoughts. His friend is a constant and solid presence next to him. "I got fired today." He speaks up finally, letting the words and their meaning hang in the air between them for a moment before continuing. "I don't know what happens next." Shinso, ever the rational thinker, doesn't freak out or get mad. He just sighs and leans on him a little more. "We'll get through this. Don't worry. We'll find a way." As Shinso says that, Izuku feels a couple of raindrops hit his skin. It's definitely going to rain on them. "Don't freak out, but I may have also almost got run over by a car." He feels the shift in his friend immediately. The way his shoulders tense. His breath catching as if he's about to yell out something. "Don't worry though. Someone saved me. I even think he's in your class." Todoroki Shudo? He said he was in the hero course. If only slightly, Shinso relaxes again. Although he can feel the piercing gaze next to him, scanning his body for any severe injury. "I'll have to thank him later then," Shinso mutters finally. "Did you get hurt again?" The disinterest in his voice barely hides his concern. "No. In fact, I think it even helped me a little." "Only you would think getting almost run over by a car would help." Shinso chuckles. The exasperation in his tone is palpable. "It's not like that. Just, for a moment there I felt my powers come back. Even now, I can feel them. As if my senses are slowly heightening again. At least one good thing came out of this. The drops of water are now multiplying. Slowly but surely it begins to pour around them. The rain washes over them, soaking their clothes in an instant. Droplets of water kiss their skin and traces patterns across their bodies. It becomes a living fabric. Something Izuku can reach his hand through and feel. The water shifts under his touch and it's as if a switch has been clicked. His eyes widen as he feels something snap back into place. As if a missing piece of the puzzle has finally been found. Suddenly everything feels right again. The world around him burst back into life. It hits him so hard that he has to close his eyes. "Hey Izuku, you okay there?" Even with his eyes closed, he sees his best friend form. Feels the concern radiating from his posture. Hears his increased heartbeat. He feels each droplet of water hitting his skin. Hears the distant footsteps of strangers rushing through the rain to find shelter. Feels the buzz of the city wash over him and overwhelm his senses. It shouldn't be normal. It isn't. But it's his normal. And it's as if the world is back on its course. It takes him a few minutes to readjust to the sudden influx of information being moved at him. When his breathing settles back to normal. When everything isn't as loud and as intense as before, he slowly opens his eyes back up again. What he sees takes his breath away. It's not the usual scenery he was used to. It's not the vague form he sees, amid the void and darkness. Instead, for the first time in his life, he sees something. Something more than a vague shape. He can't help the tears that form in his eyes as he sees for the first time his best friend's face. He's still blind. He still can't see, but it's different. It's something more. He realizes with a start that he's never used his powers under this much rain before. Usually the world around him is somewhat clearer. However, it has never been like this before. Each droplet of water creates a ripple of vibrations that echo and spreads. Each raindrop makes a sound as it hits the surface and for the first time in forever. Izuku can see. Oh my god. He whispers breathlessly. Happiness and wonder overwhelming him as he gazes into his best friend's eyes. He sees the exact moment Shinso seems to understand what's happening. See the apprehension and awe in his expression. He can't help but think that it's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. The way the rain falls and glimmers in a million pieces as it touches his skin. It's as if the world is shining. Small sparks of light filling his darkness for the first time. His hand unconsciously goes up to touch Shinso's face. Outstretched and shaking. His hesitation is cut short as the teen in question meets him halfway, taking hold of his hand and guiding it all the way to his face. Shinso's hand is warm against his as he helps him trace his features, allowing Izuku to map out every inch of his face, committing to memory every detail as if it's the last time he'll ever see it. It's probably the case after all. His powers are back now. They're in full force now. The rain helps too. However, it won't be like the case for long. Izuku's probably never going to get this chance again. They stay there for a long time, frozen in time as the rain falls around them. Every drop of water adds a whirlwind to their world. By then Shinso is crying too. Their tears are mixed with the water that pours over them. Both of them too overwhelmed to pay the cold any mind. For the first time in the past few weeks, Izuku's world doesn't feel as dark anymore. As they sit there, he finally believes that maybe, just maybe, he's going to be okay.